The story begins in the doctor's office, who apologized for having made a wrong diagnosis and told Lady Blanchett that she would not die. The girl who was diagnosed with a life expectancy of 3 months, Laurier Blanchett. Laurier started to laugh. She thought she would die soon and lived, doing the things she always wanted. And the man who is the great sword of the empire and the god of war is pursuing her. It turned out there was no illness during all this time. That doesn't mean the girl was happy with this news. And then she started screaming, remembering everything she had done during these months. It all started a couple of months ago. She felt strange and thinking she was sick. She went to the doctor in secret. She said she had insomnia and felt sick after every meal and based on these symptoms. The doctor suggested she had Rockagura disease. This is a rare and incurable disease that occurs in the few people born with excess mana. Unfortunately, Rockagura disease is fatal in 98% of cases. The doctor announced to Lady Blanchett that she would die in 3 months and that she was sentenced to death. She was so surprised that she doesn't remember what happened that same day. She doesn't remember how she got home, but she thought she couldn't die in such a quiet way. And simple. She decided to make a bucket list and make sure to complete them all. Rietta stood up and shouted that she would fulfill the list of things she wanted to achieve in her life. Her friend, although she didn't understand what she was talking about, supported her joyfully, and Rietta asked her what she would like to do before dying. The devoted girl said that the only wish she has is to die for her princess. Rietta was moved by such devotion, but her maid added that she needed to comb her hair first, because she didn't know how to do it. The girl told Rietta that she would like to buy all kinds of cakes and eat a bit of each one. That said, she forced her princess to go to dinner. Lariette herself didn't want to go there. She really didn't want to, because she didn't get along with her family. For example, a father who wants to sell his daughter to an old and rich marquis, a grand duke who participated in the founding of the country. But his business went bankrupt. The mother, who is at the same time her husband, also wants to sell her as soon as possible. She herself married for convenience. And our heroine, who pretends to be a naive fool but actually understands everything, is Lariette Blanchett and also her older brother, whom her parents truly love. Rayon Blanchett. The successor, Rayon, completed all the preparatory courses for inheritance. She is the second daughter. And she received neither maintenance nor education. She only works in the office to help her brother. Her brother entered the room and asked her what she was doing here. And Lariat replied that she was also a member of the family. So why shouldn't she be here? Then he asked her if she had had any problems with her studies lately. It was just that Joel had been quiet lately and walked around with a very gloomy face. In fact, she was jealous because she could study much better than this spoiled fool when wine was suddenly thrown on her head. It was her unpleasant brother who said that because of Lariat, he lost his appetite. Then he turned to his parents and told them he wouldn't eat until she left. Of course, her parents supported their son, telling him to go up to his room and wash up. Frustrated, Lariat couldn't answer him as she got up from her chair. As she approached the door, she thought that she would die anyway in 3 months. But they wouldn't care. She didn't want to die being the same naive fool, and from now on she will do whatever she wants. She will die anyway, so there is nothing to fear. April 3rd, 732, according to the imperial calendar, she was sentenced to 3 months of life imprisonment. Her bucket list included the following: treat Anne to a cake, start collecting money. Break off the engagement with the Marquis with a scandal. Dating a handsome guy for just 3 months, the trip to the West that Rayon spoke of, she thought she wouldn't regret it. After all, she dedicated her entire life to her family. A family that doesn't care about her, so she wants to start living her own life at least for this time. She was happy she could fulfill her first wish right away and invite Anne to eat cake. Suddenly her carriage got stuck in a hole, or rather a wheel. And the coachman said he would try to fix it immediately. Larietta looked and asked if he needed help because she could fix it faster. But Anne quickly grabbed her and pulled her back, saying that Duke Candela's carriage was next to them. They say this is the most powerful family in the empire, and the Duke himself is like a monster. Suddenly the carriage lifted, and when Larietta looked again, she saw a guy in front of her with his mouth gagged. He could lift the carriage with one hand. Larietta was happy and thought she now understands why this is a special family. But when she returned home, an unpleasant surprise awaited her. She expected to rest, but this fat marquis appeared. This toad continued to bother and grope her in all possible ways, telling her that they would soon be husband and wife. She remembered her list, on which she wrote that she wanted to break off her engagement, when this guy Bill approached and told her she looked delicious. Larietta decided to break off her engagement today and started using her abilities, created today to get rid of all unpleasant things. Great mages have always been born in the Blanchett family, among them Larietta Blanchett, a true sorceress who always surpassed Rayon. She was gifted with magical talent, but Rayon himself could never learn to use it properly. He was always jealous of Larietta's talent. This magic was the result of lessons with knowledgeable teachers that Larietta attended occasionally. Larietta shut the vile Marquis's mouth and said she would only explain things once, for which he needed to listen carefully. She approached him and told him she had no intention of marrying him. And thus, spectacularly, she broke off the engagement. Larietta directly said that he is simply trash, who evaluates the value of people and themselves in monetary currency. The girl's parents came out, and seeing this, the father immediately dispelled his forces, and the fat man fell to the ground. When he could finally speak, he told Larietta that she would never forget this humiliation. But our girl was already benefiting from it. But of course her parents tried to stop him, saying she was still immature. But the Marquis insisted on his own and quickly left. Larietta thought that for these people money is more valuable than their daughter, and the Marquis usually buys people as slaves. She was thinking about how tired she was of these fools when her mother started screaming that she was crazy. Larietta replied that she should have done this a long time ago, when suddenly she was hit. Good luck came from her father, who shouted that he was determined to settle all the debts of the Blanchett family. And she ruined everything. Once she came to her senses, Larietta asked if it was her fault that the family was in debt. And why should she pay other people's debts? Her family did nothing for her. She felt neither interest nor love. Her father decided to sell her to enjoy the money and fame, and she was supposed to become the Marquis's plaything. The mother started screaming at the food she eats, the clothes she wears, the place where she sleeps. She screamed that Larietta must pay for living like a princess all this time. That's why all this time she performed Rayon's duties on the estate in the office. She was in charge of the documents and became an item of exchange in their hands. And in the Marquis's hands. The father started shouting that he should have done this sooner. He loved her, but he didn't even know how to pay her back. That's what this man thought. Her father ordered them to remove her name from the family register right away. Larietta replied that it was just a piece of paper, which meant nothing. And above all, she was always afraid of hurting her parents' feelings, but now she doesn't care anymore. She bowed, thanking him for everything, and left, followed by the man shouting at her not to dare take any of her things. Without going far, Rayon ran to her, and Larietta told him not to fire her. And Rayon replied that it was a farewell. The imbecile asked how she dared ruin the family's mood by being there and insulting him during dinner. He shouted that she didn't even know how to use the same earth magic, let alone other elements, and apparently decided to show off his powers. When he directed a column of fire towards Larietta, Larietta calmly repelled his attack. Then she said that she was much stronger than him and imprisoned him underground, a pleasant sight. She could finally leave this terrible house, tired but happy. Anne, who was very eager to follow her, so much so that it took a lot of effort to stop her. She was glad to have finished the first, second, and third items on the list in one day, so only the fifth remained. And the fourth. That is, she would like to be with an experienced man, so that it would be easy to date him. But we don't know what kind of experience we are talking about. First, she has some money, but she still needs to earn a lot to live happily. And to do that, she must do what she does best. She entered the building and said she wanted to find a job for the purification mage. It is less popular and effective than healing magic, and even more so it requires a lot of mana. It cannot be used on people with greater magical and divine power than the user. And you cannot use it on yourself. Larietta thought she was overflowing with mana, and for her this was a mere trifle. But the man sitting at the table said they were not looking for purification mages, because there were healing mages everywhere. So they kicked her out, and Larietta was already burned and wondered if she should look for another job. When suddenly 2 pickpockets snatched her purse and ran away, Lariat shouted for everyone to hear that they were thieves. The 2 boys laughed, because they were not afraid of the purification mage as they fled. But that was not the case. Lariat chased after them, shooting fire shots at them. The boys managed to escape her, but the Duke stood in their way. One of them said he could smell rotten corpses. The Duke quickly dealt with these 2, and taking her purse, approached and handed it over to her. Larietta did not know he was the Duke, so she thought he was a coachman. The most prestigious ducal family in the empire is Harshan Escher Kandil. He is also called the greatest sword of the empire. A general who won a war where defeat was inevitable. A man named cruel military leader because of his stubborn character. And Larietta also thought he was very handsome, so much so that after what she saw, she would not regret dying. The smell is a bit repulsive, but it's okay, because his face smells very fragrant. Larietta thought, with a face like that, he would be very popular on dates, but he is known for being cold-blooded. So she has no chance. The guy thought she seemed to be a girl from a noble family, moving around alone. But still couldn't find what he was looking for. He thought she was scared. Until this curse ends. Even if he saves someone, they will still be afraid of him, thought Asher. But suddenly Lariat touched him and happily asked if he had a girlfriend. She explained that she said this because she really liked his appearance and asked if he wanted to go out with her. The Duke did not expect this at all. Lariat noticed his reaction and decided to start over and introduced herself. She asked his name and knew it was rude to ask like that. But the Duke still answered her by telling her his name. The guy was surprised by the girl, and Lariat said he had a pleasant voice, and that this charms him. She said she was pleased to meet him, but the guy was still in shock. He thought it had been 20 years since someone called him by his name, and Lariat asked him if he would only date her for 3 months. After a short silence, Asher looked at her and asked if she was afraid of him. He added that she shouldn't joke about such things. He left, but he still looked around to look at her, but decided to speak more seriously. Hilarietta was just impressed by this reaction, so much so that her nose started to bleed. As he said, the reason for this was her charisma. She thought there was one thing that even a handsome man like him didn't have, and that was her. The girl went to one of the establishments to relax, but she was worried about how to meet him again. Suddenly, she heard the company calling his name and walked towards them to listen to their conversation. Without thinking twice, she sat at their table and asked what kind of rumor. The guy replied that the Duke was under a terrible curse. When approaching him, one could smell the scent of death. Larietta started eating with them, and the guy continued to say that the Duke smelled like a rotten corpse. But Larietta didn't consider the smell such a terrible problem. The guy said that the Duke is looking for a purification mage in the Information Guild. He wants to break the curse, and, as the curse is too strong, purification mages are the only ones who can help. For some reason, Larietta ate dinner quietly with them, without even knowing her interlocutors. It turns out there aren't many purification mages. Purification magic consumes more mana than healing magic, and is designed to dispel curses. However, in this case it is unpopular, because more people die from swords than from curses. So, the Duke could not find a good purification mage. He decided to go to the tiger's lair to save him. A week later, our heroine managed to find Duke Escher. She said that he might be scared by the fact that they met in this way, and added that they can start an employer-employee relationship. She introduced herself as the best purification mage in the entire empire, Riette Blanchett. Escher thought that although he was surprised, he was not scared. Riette surprised the Duke by telling him that she would be the one to clean his curse. And in return, he would provide her with accommodation and also sign this document in which we can count the reason why she was able to come at the right time. She found a man who was looking for a cleaning mage for the Duke and blackmailed him into telling everyone what he had told everyone about it. Or she would tell him when the Duke arrived. Larietta thought he looked really scary when she asked if he could take responsibility for what she had just presented. And if it's just a joke, he will never see the sun again, he added. Larietta thought she hadn't studied magic properly, but she knows purification magic well. So everything should be fine. But she thought she would die anyway, so there was no need to be afraid. She took his hand and started to clean it. Purification consumes much more mana than she thought. The curse is too strong, and the difficulty is that it seems to absorb her power. She has lost all her stamina and mana, but everything needs to be checked. Asher was very worried, thinking that he shouldn't expect anything, and he himself knows that nothing will come of it anyway. This is what has happened to him since he was little. He knows it very well, it's a curse. We are shown a stranger who said he would introduce himself with the appearance of torn flesh. The smell of rotten corpses will fill the room he will be in. She thought that if she waited long, she would quickly be disappointed, but a miracle happened. While the guy was shocked by what he saw, Larietta asked him if he would sign the contract. But the guy thought that this miracle could break his curse forever, and he didn't want to miss it. And Lariette lost consciousness due to the use of a large amount of mana. Asher decided that he would never let her go until his curse was broken. In exchange for lifting the curse, the Duke provides Lariette with accommodation and food for 3 months. Then she woke up in bed, and the Duke was next to her. She asked where they were, and the Duke replied that they were in the Duchy of Candle. He brought her here, as written in the contract. And if it was rude of him, then he can take her home. But Larietta, of course, refused the offer. Then Escher handed her the contract that Larietta herself had drawn up. But she just thought it was very pretty. She was very happy and asked if he had really signed it, and Asher replied that she was the first person who could influence the curse. And Ada took his hands in hers, since an embrace of joy is rude. Even a handshake will do. She told him not to worry, because she would take care of him in the future. But Asher added that their relationship was nothing more than that of employer to employee. Lariette asked to be called by her name. Asher couldn't understand why she wasn't afraid of him. He got up and said he had come here to see how she was, since she had lost consciousness. And her things were already here. She thought he seemed to have a lot of experience in love relationships. But he still avoids it. She started thinking that if she wasn't his type. Larietta smiled, thinking that tastes could change. The smile scared Asher, and he told her she shouldn't get out of bed yet, since she hadn't recovered yet. This only made Larietta more excited, and she smiled, which scared Asher again. And he said she should rest, and they would talk tomorrow. When he left, she started screaming that it was illegal to show his face so soon after waking up. Because he was so handsome that she kept shouting that he was handsome. And behind the door was Asher, who had been listening to Larietta scream about his appearance the whole time. Of course, this surprised Asher greatly and made him blush. He said she was really strange. In the morning, in his office, he was reading documents. Hilarietta was already staring at him, and Asher asked her if she wanted to tell him something. Hilarietta replied that she was waiting for him to stop pretending he didn't notice her. She surprised him by asking if he wanted to eat with her. She thought they could have breakfast together tomorrow. Asher said she must have a good digestion and appetite if she wanted to eat with him. Lariette asked what he meant, but Asher interrupted her and asked how much she knew about his curse. She said she knew nothing about it while dragging the table towards Asher's desk. Asher replied that this is what the caster leaves at the moment of death. It is very powerful. The option to kill the caster and destroy the curse disappears immediately. Lariette asked when he was cursed, and Asher replied that at age 7 perhaps he hadn't realized it. But this diadem is enchanted and can prevent smells. He removed the bandage and showed his hand, saying that this was a curse where the skin of the body rots, like that of the dead. Even cleaning magic only slowed down the decomposition process. Asher replied that this curse could not be lifted. Lariat began to feel sorry for him, but Asher thought she could run away from such disgusting speeches, in which case he would have to catch her and lock her up with him, the creepy guy. Since she can lift the curse, he will do anything to make sure she stays with him. Anything. But Lariat did something that surprised Asher even more. She took his hand in hers and asked if he felt pain and what she should do, because he was suffering a lot. He doesn't know how hard it is to live with a curse. She wanted to use her as a tool and now blames herself for it. Therefore, she told Asher that she promised him she would definitely lift the curse. Asher wondered why she wasn't afraid of him. Everyone else avoided him because they felt disgusted and sick from his rotten skin. By treating him like a person and looking at him as if he were cute, he thought that this way he might become a greedy egoist. But Asher stopped her because she had already used too much mana. He said there was no need to exaggerate. Lariat replied that she wouldn't have enough mana, so she was just testing. The left hand already looks much better, and the cleaning magic continues to work inside him. She feels that the cleaning magic is still present in his body and performs a test. His body has a limit of purification magic that can be maintained in it for a while, until the left hand is purified. Other parts cannot do it. But Asher thought that he was willing to clean himself a little, and while she was saying this, Asher served her tea. Larietta told him not to worry, that she would take responsibility and clean everything before she died. He didn't understand what she meant by death, and she said she meant as quickly as possible. Larietta said everything would be fine, and Asher asked her if she was afraid of him. He thought she looked terrible, but Larietta didn't see it and asked him if he had any reason to be afraid of her. And then she remembered the rumors and asked about the rumor about the war demon. And it was true that he won the war, doomed to failure. He received the title of national hero. It was probably the jealous members of the imperial family who spread this filth, so that he could not rise in influence. And the curse is not his whim. One must fear the mage who sent the curse, and not his victim. It is right to blame the victim. Let the criminal pay for what he did. She suddenly took his face in her hands. Lariat said she wasn't afraid of him, nothing more than the fear that he wouldn't date her. Asher was embarrassed and told her to let go. Lariat thought his cheeks were very soft and tender. Getting up, she said they would meet for dinner at 7. This made Lariat very happy. Satisfied, Lariat thought that he was most likely sensitive to touch. She touched his cheeks a little, and he already agreed to dinner. Suddenly, a butler approached him, Halstein, the faithful and veteran butler of the Duke Candela family. He asked her if she had met the Duke, and Lariat replied that thanks to him she didn't get lost, and immediately found his office. So she was even able to arrange a dinner date, and the butler, surprised, asked if they could have dinner together. He thought the owner hadn't eaten with anyone for a long time, after the death of the former duchess. The Duke no longer shared food with anyone. And the butler asked her to take care of the Duke, and Larietta said they were just going to dinner. After talking to Larietta, the butler immediately went to the Duke and put a book on successful dating guide on the table. Escher thought that in childhood he had been taught table manners, and that no new rules appeared in the future. Although he is very afraid that this sorceress, who is 5 years younger, will laugh at her. Moreover, she says it's a date, a book that has nothing to do with him. But the butler was persistent and asked to read the book aloud in 27 years of service to the master. He had never been as useful as he is now. Refusing the book again, the butler decided to read it aloud himself, politely pushing back the chair for the lady, but Asher interrupted him and, standing up, he said he didn't want to listen to it. He got ready and left, thinking he had to hide the unpleasant smell of the curse coming from him. Dinner arrived, Asher came and immediately sat in a chair, thinking they would just eat together. But her joy surprises him. He didn't think she would like it so much. Larietta got up, took her plate, sat next to him, and asked if she could change something in the contract. She leaned closer and said she thought the payment was insufficient compared to the purification magic spent. Asher moved away a little and thought that modern young people speak so directly. It is worth remembering that his constant interlocutor was an old butler. He believed he could give her all the money she wanted, with which she could even buy a small country. Mandatory to eat together at least once a day, go out together at least 3 times a week. Expenses will be paid, including the limit. Asher asked what asking for rides together meant, and Larietta replied that of course they would be their dates. He thought that the only thing she wanted to add was a date. Asher thought it was strange, but it will be difficult if she leaves saying she wasn't paid adequately. Therefore, he decided to add one more clause if artist A disappears without lifting B's curse. Then A will accept any consequence that B can inflict. Larry nodded, although she was a little surprised because she was going to clean him anyway. She had no reason to be afraid. After signing the agreement, Larry asked him what he would think if she invited him on a picnic tomorrow. The property was huge, and there were many beautiful places. Asher replied that he would leave tomorrow, and Larry immediately said they could meet. The day after tomorrow, Asher asked why there was such a hurry. Larry replied that this was a very important matter, because she was going to win Asher's love. And he agreed. A few days later, Larry dressed in a cute dress and, while looking around the property, she thought the house was really beautiful and nice to live in, and that her mana had already been restored. Therefore, she decided that she must hurry to clean the curse before leaving. Asher was in his office, and when he saw her, he said she got up early. Larry continued saying strange things, saying that the sun called Asher never sets. His face blinds forever. Asher said they would have a picnic in the afternoon, otherwise it would be colder at night. And then they would return immediately, as he had a lot of work to do. Larry said she could clean his curse before the picnic, which surprised Asher, who didn't expect her to restore her mana so quickly. He thought that touching bare skin would be more effective. So he untied the bandage. After cleaning, she noticed that the hand was no longer so cursed, so one time should be enough. As she said last time, she could get rid of the curse completely after a few days of cleaning. Asher, impressed by her strength, looked at his hand. He had been looking for a solution for more than 10 years. And never thought it would be so easy to clean. He asked her if she was okay, and Larry replied that she had already mastered it, that she used to spend too much mana. Then she said that now they should go for a picnic when they went out. A cold wind blew, and Asher remembered that he had said that spring morning was still cold. Larry decided to get closer to Asher, and was happy to be able to say that it still made sense to have a date together. Recalling the romantic books, Larry said she would feel warm if someone gave her a coat. But Asher immediately replied that he didn't want to do that. He said it wasn't because it was harmful, but because his coat smelled disgusting. But Larry surprised him again by saying that Asher really shouldn't catch a cold. So she quickly ran to the fountain, covered him with a blanket, and sat down, telling him to come here, that the sun warmed here. He approached and sat down. He said she was strange. Larry asked him to sit closer to her, but Asher replied that he liked that distance. This frowning cat behavior annoyed Larry. She wondered if he had been hurt in a past relationship or if he simply didn't like her. Of course, she didn't have many relationships, but contact is important, and Larry decided not to give up. Asher thought he couldn't imagine such an atmosphere. Larry opened the basket and said it was full of all kinds of treats. Asher realized that the butler had arranged everything and wanted to disappear. He asked Asher what food he liked best, and he replied that there was nothing. That Larry thought it was strange, and how could he live without his favorite food? Then she took out a sandwich and told him that she liked salmon sandwich and disliked the smell of cucumbers. That of course she could eat it, but that she was usually squeamish. She handed him her sandwich, while Asher thought that since she is a purification mage, then his smell is also purified. Even the smell of his curse is not that strong. Asher accepted the sandwich. He wanted to ask her if he smelled, but he restrained himself and started eating his sandwich. Once again, admiring his beauty, Larry decided to use her magic to weave a flower diadem, and then placed it on Asher's head. Asher didn't understand this and told her not to laugh at him. Larry replied that she wasn't laughing at him and asked him to leave the flower diadem on. But the wind blew hard and the hoop kept flying. Larry ran after it, no matter what was in front. Then she fell directly into the fountain behind them, and she took Esser with her, who asked her to stop embarrassing him. He touched her long hair and asked what she would do if she caught a cold. Larry replied that she was in good health, so she wouldn't catch a cold, but Asher still lifted her up and told her they had to go back. After a while, the butler took her temperature, which rose to 38.5. Everything can be understood from Etcher's face. Asher, unhappy, said he had a strong immune system, but Larry replied that it was the first time he had gotten sick. But then she simply apologized. Asher said he had to go to the imperial castle today, so he called the priest. And Larry replied that everything was fine. She thought she would be capricious and ask him to stay with her. And Larry thought he was already worried about her condition. The Duke left and got into the carriage, remembering that she came from the Blanchett family. And it was strange that her family could so easily allow their daughter to stay in the Duke's residence. He couldn't even imagine that cohabitation would be so difficult and decided to find out more about it. As he left his estate, another carriage headed towards his carriage. Apparently a clergyman was heading to the estate. A man with long hair and bright yellow eyes entered Larry's room and told her that he had come from the temple. The guy sat next to her on the bed and introduced himself as Doha, a servant of the High Temple. And Larry only said his name. Larry thought he was very handsome, and Doha took her face in his hands and began to treat her. Suddenly he asked how the lady got to such a place. She explained that due to the Duke's curse. Even at the temple they avoided him, there was also a clear hierarchy in the temple. A priest like him was often ignored. Larry noticed a scar on his forehead. She had heard that this type of wound only happened to low-ranking priests who had no money. And the priest had already completed his treatment. If they had money, they could have assigned another cleric to heal the wound, so she decided to help him. In thanks for his treatment, she asked him to come closer and began to heal his wound, which it turned out also required a lot of mana. But she still managed. The priest was amazed and asked if she was a healing mage. He looked at her suspiciously. He leaned closer and asked if she would like to work as his personal healing mage. They would definitely agree on a price. This surprised Larry because she thought that inferior priests lacked money, especially since she preferred purification. So she refused, but the priest did not back down and asked what would happen later. She could simply tell him when she was free. Why isn't the priest a little more modest and doesn't get so close to her? Larry replied that she would think about it, and then Doha said that, as a token of gratitude, he would continue to treat her for free. If she healed him, he would definitely pay accordingly. And Larry continued joking, saying his face was dazzling. But money worked and she agreed. And Doha said that now that they have a good relationship, they can become close friends. The cunning fox explained that he suggested this because he really liked Lady Larietta. Larry thought she had never had friends like this before, and that it would be good to experience friendship before death. And she joyfully accepted to become his friend. Then he returned to the temple, where he was received, but they called him High Priest Mikkel Duavelian, which means he is not low-ranking. He was greeted by a subordinate who complained that it was very exhausting when the high priest constantly wandered where he pleased. He also noticed that the scar on his face had disappeared and asked about it. Doha replied that the healing sorceress did it. This surprised the guy, and he asked if she meant that there is a healing mage who has the same power as their high priest. Meanwhile, Asher was still sitting in his carriage, hesitating whether he was succeeding or not. He didn't want to go, but he went out anyway. The coachman was worried that he might decide to kill someone else today. Asher thought he still felt like he had to go straight to her. He couldn't understand why he kept taking care of the sorceress before he could open the door. Larry opened it. Asher thought this was the first time someone had met him at the door. The butler's feelings were definitely hurt because he was just coming out to greet him. But without giving a sign, he passed by her, but Larry tied his hand and thanked him for the priest who healed her. She placed her hand on his forehead and told him that in 2 days he would be completely healthy. Asher quickly moved away from her and said there was no affection clause in their agreement. But she followed him. She asked him if he didn't want to see her and didn't think about her for a minute during the day. Asher replied that he did not. But Larry noticed his ears turning red and said he was having a strange reaction. And again asked him if he was thinking about her. Then she asked him what he would do tomorrow. Asher replied that he would be sorting documents in the mansion and asked if she wanted to do the cleaning. But she replied that she would do it in 3 days. Larry suggested having a date and showed him the tickets, but Asher only asked what the pieces of paper were. And Larry pouted and said they weren't just paper and that it cost her a lot to get those tickets. She asked what the show would be, and Larry replied that it was a famous performance and a premium box, and that the last performance would be tomorrow. But Asher immediately refused. Larry, with teary eyes, asked why, while Asher thought he couldn't go to such a place with his curse. He is sure that as soon as he enters, everyone will avoid him and look at him with disgust. And he doesn't know why she takes his curse so lightly, but he needs to understand that not all people are like that, and that he is not allowed the luxury of going to a public place. But instead of explaining to him, she asked him if she really wasn't afraid of him, because the rumors about the war demon were not just fairy tales. And tens or hundreds of lives had died by his hands. It's no wonder others are afraid of him, because he is close to death. Not only in the sense of smell and rot, but also in his actions. Larry thought it was really scary, but not enough to run away. And then she just hit him. She got angry and said that he dared to attack Duke Candle and asked him what he would do now. Moreover, she usually looked at the Duke's face and took his hands without his consent, and also called him by his name. Asher was clearly lost. She screamed if he was going to kill her now, because he was saying those things and she wanted to hear the answer he wanted. And also the reason. Larry asked him if he wanted to go to the show with her or not, and told him not to worry about others, and that he should only think about what he wanted to do. Then she left, saying she wanted to hear his answer tomorrow, and that if he refused, she would go with a completely different guy. The next day arrived and Larry smiled with happiness, not to mention Asher. To celebrate, she missed a step and started to fall, but Asher quickly caught her. She simply liked it, and Asher told her not to take his hands in secret, which annoyed Larry, and she replied that she did it because he caught her. Turning to the crowd, Asher was noticeably nervous, and Larry decided to help him, taking his hand and telling him he could and especially since they had a private vitamin box. After watching the performance, they left the hall and Larry was happy. He said the performance was very fun, but Asher said it was not bad. Larry said the main character is very handsome, and Asher asked her if she liked princes. But Larry replied that she likes everything beautiful. She asked him to wait in the carriage and went to the bathroom. When she came out, she thought she wanted to dine with him, when suddenly the fat Marquis appeared. Larry immediately started preparing her magic and reminded him that she had told him it would be better for him to avoid meeting her. The Marquis replied that he didn't understand the situation he was in. Even if he resisted, the precious body must not be pierced. He was a vile guy. Suddenly, she found herself surrounded, and he told her he was looking forward to meeting her, although he couldn't forget the humiliation of that day. But now that she is a commoner, he decided to make her his concubine since she is very beautiful. Fortunately, Asher arrived on time and got rid of those holding Larry. And Asher hit the Marquis. He said he was waiting for her, but she didn't come back, so he came to pick her up. Asher said that anyone who dares to touch what belongs to him will die, and asked her if she was disappointed in him. The Marquis woke up and started yelling at Asher if he knew who he was, and Asher asked him why he was telling him this. Apparently, Asher is also not against killing him, and Larry said this is the Marquis, and that this situation will not lead to anything good. Asher thought he had been recognized by the Emperor and had his favor, so there was no need to worry. But Larry took his hand and dragged him. They got into his carriage, and Asher calmly thought that he didn't care about the Marquis. The main thing for him was to save her. He asked her if she was okay. Larry replied that she was out of breath. Asher began to worry that now, having seen his cruelty, she would want to end all relations with him. But they were subject to contracts, so it wouldn't matter. But Larry called him and told him he was great and that he was much cooler than the main character in the play. She thought it was wrong to resort to violence so easily, but let's assume it was in self-defense. Doha treated Larry and told her to be careful because she was sick again. Larry thought it was probably because of yesterday's incident. Suddenly, Larry asked him if it was possible to cure an incurable disease with divine power. An incurable disease is a disease that cannot be cured, not even with healing magic, nor with divine power. But if it can be cured, then it is not called incurable. Doha said that it is possible to cure someone with such a disease with a divine power equal to that of His Holiness. The Pope. Remember, he is the Pope himself. He could see his divine power. Larry had a twisted mana chain. This is a rare case that happens to people with an unbalanced excess of mana. And rough. This girl will not die, but will suffer bone pain all her life. Healing will not be easy, but it will not take long. Doha thought she was a useful mage, so it was fine to waste a little. Larry's magic was rude because no one taught her how to use it. So Doha said he would help her recover periodically, and Larry replied that she would be grateful. Doha suddenly hugged her and began her treatment again, using his power. He said that was all for today, that the procedure would have to be repeated several more times. Then Doha asked her if she could help him a little in return. She showed her hand, which was bleeding, and Larry asked how he got so hurt. And Doha simply replied that it was so. His theory was confirmed. It turns out he hurt himself to test his skills. Larry fell onto the bed because she spent too much mana. No wonder, because he is a high priest. Doha gave Larry the gem as payment for the healing. She asked him where he got it, and Doha lied saying he just picked it up. Larry was very happy for such a valuable payment. She started thanking him and told him she would treat him like a regular customer. She told him to remember that there was no other sorceress he could visit except her. Doha agreed, but he himself thought that now she doesn't dare to run away. She is still the same naive girl. The next day, the butler greeted Larry and asked if she was looking for Lord Larry. He asked if she knew where Asher was. The butler replied that the gentleman had returned late and was now sleeping, and asked her if she could wake him up. He will be happy if she not only wakes the master, but preferably marries him. The butler has already worked out a plan for years. To get to the master bedroom, you have to go left and then right. Larry had never been in Asher's bedroom before. The room was huge and the decoration luxurious. Larry went to the Duke's bed and woke him up. Asher got up and, all messy, asked her what she was doing there, and suddenly remembered how the butler tried to convince him to marry her. Larry sat on his bed and said she thought it was better to clean the bedroom at that time, so she should start immediately. She said that from today, she would clean the upper part of his body. The curse is only cleaned if it touches bare skin. How cunning! Asher was very surprised, and Larry insisted that he undress, moving even closer to him. While he hesitated, Larry said she could undress him herself. Asher refused and started taking off his shirt. Asher asked if she needed to remove the bandage, and Larry replied that he had to touch bare skin. Asher removed the bandage, and his body was saturated with curses. The curse is really very strong. Larry was surprised, but still started to treat him. Larry said the curse is so big that she cannot finish everything at once, but that she would try. While Larry was treating him, Asher felt very ashamed because she was too close. She used too much mana again and fell right on top of him. Larry admitted that she didn't really have much mana left because she treated the priest yesterday. Larry said she had become friends with him and that, if it didn't interfere with the cleaning, she wanted to help him from time to time. Asher first wanted to ask her if she did the same thing to him, but then he thought that a priest is usually a woman, so maybe he wouldn't have to worry about anything. And Larry asked Asher when he would fall in love with her before passing out. The next day, Larry couldn't find Asher. She ran all over the estate looking for him. At the table, she sadly said that Asher was still avoiding her. She thought maybe she had pressured him too much. She consults Doha about all topics, although apart from the curse, they manage to become friends while looking for Asher around the estate. Larry thought that since Doha was so handsome, he must have known many girls. Doha noticed her gaze and asked what if she made him jealous. He said that there isn't a single man who can resist the sight of his beloved with another. Larry replied that she didn't have a suitable partner. She thought she never had a boyfriend or male friends because of her fiancé. Doha replied that this was too much. Pulling her towards him, he said that he was also a man. Talking to her and treating her at the same time, Larry was surprised by his strength. This jealousy operation did not seem like such a bad idea, she thought. Larry imagined Asher asking her not to leave him alone and asking if she wanted to see him go crazy. This is a wonderful image. Larry liked it very much, who has already gotten used to such fantasies. But this is not good for Asher. He will be in bad condition, so he said he will try to go out alone and thanked her for her help. She decided to take care of everything herself. When Asher arrived late at night, Larry was waiting for him on the stairs, looking completely unhappy. Asher asked her why she wasn't sleeping, and Larry replied that she was waiting for him because it was very difficult to see such a busy face. She approached him, thinking it was worth putting the points on the eyes, and reminded him that he should go for a walk with her twice a week. Asher looked at her and thought that he was sick from the pain in his stomach, or it seemed like it was his heart. When he stands in front of the sorceress, he feels very strange, that's why he avoids her. Asher didn't want to feel even stranger. He turned and asked if she wanted to take a walk in the garden tomorrow. Larry felt that she was the only one clinging to this relationship. Asher would be fine as long as she cleaned him. Only now, before her death, she didn't want to obey and give up, as she did at that time. So she smiled and told Asher that he might be very busy. The Duke is busy, and she is just distracting him. Larry said Asher. He was surprised that she called him Duke and didn't say his name. Larry continued that while the Duke was busy, she would go eat with her priest friend so that this breach of contract would be missed. And she told him he could dedicate himself to work. Then she simply ran to her room, picked up her notebook, remembered that her father gave her the notebook, and gave Rayon a jeweled sword. Larry remembered that Rayon boasted that during his trip to the west, his skin was tanned. The water was good and the people were nice. Sad Larry thought she had never traveled before. The injustice was off the charts. She remembered being isolated from her family, wondering why she couldn't do what she wanted even before dying. The reason she wanted so many dates was because she wanted to take at least some happy memories with her. It's not so bad, but it's a burden for Asher, but he didn't express hostility when he was with her. The eyes with which he looked at her while watching the play. Definitely, to make things more difficult, she should try to do something about it. Larry felt a little lonely. Doha was delivered again, and his subordinate said that recently he often wears low-level priest's clothes. Joshua said that a person with an amazing breakthrough in status and divine power should not dress like this. But Doha interrupted him. He said that everyone wore exactly this outfit, and Joshua again asked if he would meet that sorceress again. Then Joshua began to complain that he had heard that she served Duke Candle, and that if his identity was revealed, it would be a real disgrace to the church. He asked if they couldn't just take them to the Altian temple, who would refuse to serve the next pope. Doha replied that he was a simple man and left. Joshua thought he had a terrible character, but if he wasn't interested, then there was no doubt. Doha himself knew that Rieta, the eldest daughter of Duke Blanche, the fiancée of Marquis Segur, whose recent actions were very alarming, also had excellent healing skills and a huge mana reserve. It is clear that she is a purification sorceress by the way she is attached to Duke Candle, who longs to be cleansed of the curse. Of course, Duke Candle will not spend money on a purification mage, and Larry, in turn, is in love with the Duke. Getting into the carriage, he thought it wouldn't be so easy to turn her into his healing mage. And flirting when the relationship is superficial is somewhat awkward. He decided that he had to try to do it alone, especially since he also really likes her. But he didn't know how to seduce her. Before arriving at the estate, Larry opened the carriage doors and loudly asked if he had time today. He quickly got into the carriage. Doha was still in shock, and Larry asked him to spend time with her to eat. And bye. However, Larry decided to carry out the jealousy operation for the sake of her relationship with Asher. Doha was a little surprised, but after a moment of silence, he gave his positive answer. He decided that now, he would definitely seduce her by inviting her on a date under the pretext of an operation. But something unexpected happened. The hero of that celebration was Larry. He wondered why Larry was holding his hand while fleeing. As for how this happened, let's go back in time 10 minutes. The boys were waiting for their dessert, and Doha complained that it was taking longer than usual. Larry replied that dessert needed more time and asked him if he liked desserts. And Doha replied that he liked sweets. Then Larry asked why she was treating him. He replied that he usually tries not to get hurt, but in reality they were forced. He lied, saying that the high priest ordered them to be treated outside the temple. And Larry told him not to worry and that if his boss bothered him, she would avenge him. Doha thought that his divine power was huge, but he had the same amount of mana. And he had no idea how great his power was. He wondered how far his interest would go. Larry said she could burn his clothes in front of people. Larry said she could tell him, and that she would do everything she could. Doha was surprised that she could also use elemental magic. He hoped that nothing would happen with his words that turned the temple into an enemy. Moreover, it was just words. As they walked, she saw a jewel in the window and thought it would suit Escher well. Apparently, she was looking at this decoration, because when Doha asked her what she was looking at, Larry got scared. Then Larry replied that she had noted the jewels and would like to see the price. Doha said he could wait for her here, and Larry quickly entered the store. But suddenly, someone pushed Doha and immediately asked if the lower dazzling one was going to apologize to the major. It seems that not everyone knows what their high priest is like. When Doha said that he should not bother him and get out of here, the guy got angry and started yelling that he couldn't imagine people. So they weren't afraid of their bosses. Doha was already wondering if he should kill him, but too many glances gathered, and he didn't want to reveal his identity. Moreover, he can deal with him later as he wishes, so now he decided to simply apologize to him. But Doha didn't have time to finish his apologies when suddenly the priest's clothes caught fire. Then Larry took Doha's hand and told him they should run away. Doha asked her if she did it, and Larry replied that she promised him she would get revenge on him. Larry said she wouldn't give up if he got into trouble, and that made Doha laugh. And Larry said he was laughing like a real villain. How fitting that he said that. Doha lowered his head onto Larry's shoulder and asked her what he should do with her. And he himself thought that now he wanted her completely. And Asher in his office despaired when he found out that she had been walking around the city with the priest all day. He only realized that his friend was a man. The butler told him that if he continued in the same spirit, this could turn into more than just a friendship. He doesn't know where they have gone or how their relationship can develop. Asher thought that even if they became lovers, it would have nothing to do with him. The sorceress is just the one who cleans his curse. Talking about dating is not forever. Although he thought so, it is clear to him that he does not believe in it. But he kept convincing himself that the sorceress only needed to clean his curse, and that he shouldn't expect anything, but Asher understood that he didn't want to go back. Asher wondered who needs such a monster. As the sorceress felt sorry for him and comforted him, but there was no need to hesitate. Later, Larry and Asher met for lunch, and Larry asked him why he suddenly called her. Because it seemed like the Duke was busy, and Asher replied that he decided he wanted to talk to her after a long break. Although Larry tried to sit with a serious face, inside she was jubilant that the jealousy strategy seemed to have worked. And his face is simply amazing. The entire universe can be conquered with such beauty, Larry thought. Suddenly, he surprised her by asking how she was, while she was removing the cucumbers and the plate, and she replied that she was spending time with a friend. Larry expected him to be jealous, since she had been out with another guy all day. But he simply said it was okay. And then Larry tried to make him show some kind of reaction and said that Doha would arrive this afternoon and that they would be in his room, and Asher said he didn't care. Not getting the reaction she expected, Larry decided to use her charm. She looked at him and asked him if he would be jealous of her. Of course, her sweet charm impressed him and he blushed, but still lied, saying he wasn't jealous. The main thing was that she wouldn't be distracted from his treatment. This, of course, greatly annoyed Larry, and when she stood up she said she had no appetite, and that she would leave first, and that they would see each other next time in the cleaning process. In her room was already Doka, who smiled wickedly in secret after learning that the jealousy strategy didn't work for the Duke. He thought that this cold-blooded one would still envy him. Doha sat next to her and told her not to be angry, but he himself thought that now he just needed to seduce her and turn her into his man. Larry, a naive soul, thought that Doha had come here for her, and there she was simply crying about her problems. She just noticed the glasses and said they made him look like a librarian and that they suited Doha well. He replied that he felt he needed to write something urgently. What Doha is talking about now is prophecy, an ability possessed only by the most eminent believers, and that it is also an important factor when choosing a pope. Doha's current state is a sign of such capacity. Doha looked at her and asked if she liked this look. Larry, of course, replied that it suited her incredibly well, and then Doha drew her towards him under the pretext of treating her. Meanwhile, the sad Asher was sitting in his office, and the butler kept looking at him furiously. So he finally vomited and said that the lady seemed offended and that if everything ended like this, then he had invited her to breakfast in vain, and one must not address a lady in such a way. Although it was the first time, he ordered a change in food for outsiders. That is, he ordered the cucumbers removed from the sorceress's meal. Asher must be experiencing emotional fluctuations since he was cursed to stay away from people. That's why it was difficult for him to feel emotions. The butler looked at him and hoped he would be happy. So he told Asher that he should stop hiding his true feelings. And before leaving his office, he added that the priest had arrived at the mansion again and advised him to go see her. He told him not to think about anything else, to think only about his heart. This surprised Asher, and he began to think about how his heart felt. Asher thought he shouldn't feel jealous, shouldn't feel any of that, and couldn't fall in love with someone. He remembered how that crazy woman committed suicide and repeated that he would symbolize torn flesh. The poor baby was horrified by this image, and the woman continued saying that the smell of rotten corpses would soon fill the room. And then she would stay with him forever. Since then, nothing touched his heart again. He still went to her room, and seeing how the priest was touching Larry, he quickly grabbed her hand. Asher didn't look happy. He threateningly told him not to touch her, and Doha removed his hands, thinking it was good that he wore glasses, because Asher might recognize him. Larry got worried and started saying that Doha was different, that he was only treating her. And Doha again put his hand on her shoulder, calming her down. Then he pulled her towards him, and Asher thought that no matter how you look at it, this is not just a friendly relationship. Doha's malicious smile only confirmed it. So Asher told him he could be free, and Doha left thinking that the Duke had no heart. This only provoked Doha, who was not going to give up, in the battle for Larry's heart. After Doha left, Asher sat next to Larry on her bed, and there was an awkward silence. Larry interrupted the silence, reminding him that he had said he wasn't jealous of her at all. And Asher himself understood that he was too excited at that moment. He thought that when he imagined her kindness towards another person, everything boiled inside him. But he didn't want her to hate him. He didn't want to hurt him. Asher wanted her to be his. He moved away from her and ignored her feelings. Suddenly, Larry asked him if she could have a drink with Doha. Worried, Asher asked her not to do this, asked her not to leave. Only now did he realize what he felt for her. He told her he had no idea his heart could beat so fast. His eyes are always on Larry, and he thinks about her, even if he doesn't want to. And thinking that now she is somewhere with another man, he wants to cut off the hand that was touching her. He finally admitted that if this is jealousy, then he admits it. He is really incredibly jealous. Asher wanted to touch her, but he didn't, because he is a spoiled monster and is afraid even to touch her. Because he is afraid of hurting her. He admitted that he felt lost. Moving a little hesitantly, he asked if the offer of a romantic relationship was still valid. Larry happily hugged him and replied that the offer was still valid. And Asher admitted to himself that he liked her. And Larry smiled happily at him and told him she would look forward to their future relationship. This was a first for him. The experience of giving and receiving love, he can't believe such a moment has come for him. They are both in love but have different dreams. Larry hoped to spend these 3 months with a sparkle, and Asher thought he needed to renovate the garden, because this is the house where Larry can live for the rest of her life. Later, he showed her the diary with his plans, and when Asher asked what it was, Larry replied that it was something they should do together. He started leafing through her diary. There are so many things in it that she cannot do because of her cursed body. And as soon as he reached the beginning, Larry quickly closed these pages and said there was nothing important on this page. He seemed calm, but she almost got discouraged because she almost reached her wish list. She didn't want him to find out that his new girlfriend had a terminal illness. After reading that the city tour was over, he was very upset and said that they seemed to have had a lot of fun. Larry started explaining that this was just a wish list, not a list of things she wanted to try with her boyfriend. But Asher, annoyed, said that then she didn't have to do it with him. Larry was amused by this and then apologized because he is so cute when he is jealous that Asher was surprised that she thought he was cute. Then she used her charm again and said she wanted to do it with her boyfriend. It worked, of course, and he said he needed to prepare the carriage, and Larry jumped on him with a hug, telling him that she liked Ash very much. They arrived at the best boutique in the empire. Larry was happy because they went to the city together. How cute, she thought. Larry tried on clothes, but after all she couldn't afford, she put on a beautiful dress. And she looked beautiful. Asher was also impressed by her beauty, to the point that he couldn't tell her. So, Larry and the girl working there worried about his silence and showed him another dress. Asher replied that she didn't need to choose, because he would buy everything she liked. In addition to ornaments that will catch her eye, Mr. Rich mode is activated. After shopping, they returned to the carriage, where they transferred all their purchases, of which there were quite a few. Then Larry asked why before. He didn't answer her when asked. Ash asked her what she was talking about, and Larry again remembered that she asked if that dress suited him, and started touching it. Asher turned around and, embarrassed, replied beautifully, thinking that she was so beautiful that he had already forgotten her. But Larry shouted that it was too late, insulted him, and started pushing him more aggressively, telling him that if she was beautiful, then she should have said so without delay. Asher couldn't stand the fact that she was bothering him so much. He took her hands and admitted that she was really beautiful. And Larry replied, if this is true, then let him kiss her now, and she pulled him towards her. But as soon as their lips met, the coachman shouted that they were there and asked if he should take all the luggage now. The kiss didn't happen, and Asher was so embarrassed that he immediately ran out of the carriage, leaving Larry alone. A few days later, Larry was a little sad, thinking that after the failed kiss attempt, there was still no progress in their relationship. She came to eat with him, and he helped her sit down. She thanked him, but thought it wasn't very different from how it was before they started. She had little time left, and he was still making her wait. Larry didn't like it. So she started flirting and said she would be very happy if Asher fed her. Today, she was going to receive the love of her lover. Asher didn't understand such a manifestation of love, but he thought he shouldn't deny her anything. And then he took the fork and handed it to Larry. Larry happily ate the food, and after moving her table closer to him, she jumped up to hug him, telling him that he was the best and very kind. But this only embarrassed our shy guy very much, and he got up. He told Larry that he had a lot of urgent work to do and ran away, all red. The butler was not happy with his action, and Larry started to think that he only wanted platonic love from her. But she still decided to check her assumption. And a few days later, I entered his room to clean him. She thought that even though she had little time, if Asher didn't like her caress, then she would have to accept it, because what kind of love is it, since it causes suffering and discomfort? Larry approached and said that today she would work on the upper part of his body, and Asher timidly began to unbutton his shirt. Asher sat on the sofa. The upper part of his body was covered in scars, and there was a violet mark next to his heart. Larry sat next to him and started treating him, but again she almost lost consciousness. But this time she remained conscious. Larry looked at him and said she was still dizzy and asked if she could hug him. But a blushing Asher replied that it was already very difficult for him to restrain himself. So it's better to keep a distance, because he might get a little impatient. And Larry replied that he didn't need to hold back and that she could do whatever she wanted. So Asher threw her on the sofa and asked her if it was true that she could do whatever she wanted. He asked again if she could really do whatever she wanted with her. They seemed to be talking about different things. Larry didn't answer, but she felt that now she had the feeling that they were about to be devoured, which was not surprising. When he kissed her hand, she only blushed more and apologized to him. Then Asher understood everything, picked her up and told her not to do that in the future. And Larry sadly said that she would no longer touch him so thoughtlessly. Asher looked worried and said that next time he wouldn't let her go so easily. And he asked her to remember this. And Larry replied that honestly she remembered it, and Asher apologized for scaring her, and said she could go, and told himself that he had to be careful. Or at least that's what he thought, until Larry asked them if they should do what they didn't finish last time. The incident started in the morning. After several days of cleaning, Larietta wanted him to take her on a date to a restaurant. The request was denied. Asher explained that even going to a restaurant with her would be difficult for him, all because of the eyes that see him as a monster and distrust the curse, Asher thought. As the Duke's lover, she will have to give up many things. He looked at his beloved with pity, and he apologized to her in his thoughts. But Larry smiled happily and said that lovers must watch out for each other no matter the situation. So the place doesn't matter, the only important thing is that they will be together. She bid him farewell, saying that he had said he had to go to the palace, and Asher replied that he would return soon. Having finished work quickly, he will go home. They will have dinner together and then talk quietly while drinking alcohol. He will ask her how her day was without her, if she adapted well to this place, what kind of alcohol and snacks she likes best. Well, that's what he was going to do, but this meeting turned out to be too long. The impatient Asher asked the Dukes how long they were going to remain engrossed in this useless dispute. Larry's father shouted, "How dare he speak so rudely in front of His Majesty?" Asher looked at him threateningly, thinking that he was Larry's father and that he should probably ignore him, because he was his beloved's father. And the Emperor said somewhat awkwardly that, as Duke Candle had said, they still couldn't reach an exact conclusion. So maybe they should end here. Hearing this, Asher quickly got up and ran out of the office. And Larry's father looked at him with contempt, calling him a vile and insolent boy. The man sitting next to him said that he was even lucky, because he knew how fierce Duke Candle was. And Larry's father replied that he couldn't stand seeing such a boy acting with such arrogance. To this, the man replied that if he wanted to save his decaying family, he should have been much wiser. Then he left humiliated and continued to blame Larry for this. Since there is no person managing the estate, the money is still disappearing. Rayon also spends recklessly, and his wife says it's his fault that Arietta ran away. Of course it's his fault. It is all due to the fact that she did not receive proper education. While Rayon works for the imperial family, money is still available. He thought, the problem is that this girl dared to confront her father. If she returns, all problems will be solved. The naive man thought that if she returned as soon as possible, he cried and regretted being wrong. He would be merciful and accept her back into the family. It seems he is the main clown here. Back with Larry, who ran into the room asking where Asher was. And the butler replied that he had gone to change, although he was worried about having left his lady waiting. Larry said she ran here as soon as she found out he had arrived, and we see Asher appearing behind her. Asher told Larry that she didn't have to meet him in such a hurry, and patted her on the head. She thought that the experience of all his relationships was immediately visible. Larry believed that he must have dated thousands of girls, thinking that with a body. And such a face cannot be his first love. And Asher wondered what Larry was thinking as her expression kept changing. Suddenly, the butler showed a cool trick that impressed Larry and shocked Asher, who asked when he found out about that. And he replied that as a butler, he should be able to do everything, and wishing them good night. He ran away, and our couple began their date. Asher was happy that they were together now. Larry didn't hesitate and immediately drank her glass. Asher worried and asked her if she was drinking too fast. Larry replied that everything would be fine. It turns out that alcohol was the only comfort that helped her. Asher asked her how the drink tasted, and Larry replied that it was sweet and refreshing. She said that before Asher arrived, she was walking in the garden. And as for Doha, he is just a friend and helped her a lot regarding relationships, said Larry. And she asked if she could continue to be treated by him. He is the best healer. Asher thought she must have wanted to hide it, so there was probably no need to ask. And besides, he wouldn't want her to hate him. Therefore, Asher replied that she could do whatever she wanted. This made Larry happy, and she sat closer to him and rested her head on his shoulder. She said it was hot here and wanted to take off those clothes, and indeed she started taking off her corset. When she couldn't do this, Larry took Asher's hand and asked him to help her. But then, Larry confidently pushed Asher and got on top of him, as the alcohol did its work. She asked him if he wanted to continue what they started. Asher thought he had to be patient and resist his desires because she was drunk. And Asher, like a gentleman, asked Larry to leave him alone. Larry replied that she would do it if he fulfilled her wish, and Asher agreed and tried to calm down. But Larry tested the guy's willpower again by asking him to kiss her. Asher reminded himself that she was drunk, but a kiss was all he needed. However, when he stood up to kiss her, he decided to stop and kissed her on the cheek. Larietta was not happy with this. She thought a kiss on the cheek was good for kindergarten, and decided to take matters into her own hands. She pulled Asher towards her and kissed him herself, and that's how the hero's first kiss happened. But after such a kiss, Asher could no longer restrain himself and threw her onto the sofa. And as soon as he told her they had to know when to stop, Larry went and fell asleep. The next morning, Larry in a very good mood ran to Asher, who on the contrary was not cheerful. She approached and asked when she fell asleep. Larry said she only remembers asking Doha for permission for the treatment, and then everything became blurry. Larry said that she normally tolerates alcohol well, but apparently cocktails don't work that way. Asher, dejected, thought that she had stolen his first kiss and forgotten everything. And he told Larry that it was now forbidden to drink alcohol with other people. When Larry said that others said she was a good drinker, Asher asked her with whom else she drank. But Larry thought she couldn't tell the truth because he had many girlfriends, and it wasn't fair. And just at that moment, the butler entered and said that the priest had arrived. And Asher got even angrier and asked to be accompanied to the room. Larry went to the living room where Doha was waiting for her and apologized for last time, since they sent him and she didn't even apologize. She sat next to him and Doha told her not to be angry and that if she wanted, she could visit him next time. Since it is too cumbersome and there are many unnecessary things, the name is in the minds of those who saw it. Larry asked if they could make changes to his treatment. Doha asked if the Duke had requested it. But Larry replied that it was her personal request because she has a boyfriend and is in contact with another man, which surprisingly upset Doha. Doha smiled and agreed. He said the effectiveness would be somewhat lower and asked her if she would now give up her friendship. Blinded by love. Manipulation worked on our naive Larry, and she told him she wasn't going to do such a thing. And she apologized to him. Then he asked her if she would refuse his request to go to the library together. The library is still open now, and Larry thought they would go there as friends. So she agreed, saying that Asher was busy at the moment. But this simple request was not easy. She thought that by leaving the mansion, she could get rid of the eyes of the servants. And the Duke would not stoop to spying on them in the library. However, his grand plan failed when Asher entered the room and said he would also go to the library with them. Doha stood up to greet the Duke and introduced himself as a low-ranking priest. Larry asked him if he had told him that he was very busy today, and Asher replied that spending time with her was much more important to him. The sweet moment between our heroes turned into a fierce rivalry when he asked if he could go with them too. Doha couldn't imagine that the Duke could go that far. He forced a smile and replied that it would be an honor if he went with them. And Miss Betty hoped that her friend and her lover would become friends, and then they could spend time together. Doha thought that he felt like he didn't have to go anywhere and wondered if his anxiety was a prophecy. He suddenly asked fearfully if they were going to the Imperial Library at Escher's house. And he replied that it was there. And then he lied, saying that he had forgotten that he still had work left at the temple, and that he could avoid a scandal if he returned there immediately. The carriage stopped, and Doha got out and apologized to Larry for being rude. And when they started driving towards the library again, Larry took his hand and said they would have a date in the library, and Asher timidly tried to calm his inner beast. Already in the library, Larry asked him if she was holding his hand too weakly. Asher only thought it was so small that he feared it would tip over with a little effort. Larry was worried because the reason they went to the library in the first place was at Doha's request. She herself didn't know what to do. So she just wandered around the library, and Asher followed her like a cute puppy. And then Larry hugged Asher and asked him to stop following her like a puppy and look for a book he wanted to read. Ash got embarrassed and asked if she had to tell him this way, and Larry replied that one must be quiet in the library. And then she ran in the other direction, thinking she could create a romance in the library. She imagined him helping her grab a book from the top shelf, so Larry approached the shelf and tried to reach the book. Larry expected Asher to approach her, but instead of him, a kind of pimp appeared. So she quickly told him to go to hell, and the boy ran away almost sobbing. After the boy left, Larry tried to repeat the romantic scene again. And she took the book, and this time Asher appeared. She asked him if he saw everything that happened, and Asher replied that he was talking about how she deliberately chose books from the top shelf for him to notice. Or when she told another guy to go to hell. How cute. He wasn't the only one who started to feel embarrassed. Asher approached and whispered to her that he even liked it and asked her to continue behaving this way with other men. But Larry said she was afraid that he would run away from her because of her cruel act. Larry asked if this bothered him, and Asher replied that no, but that if Larry ran away from him, he would definitely find her. They had a nice conversation between them. Larry said that her date in the library was very fun, and Asher replied that he certainly didn't expect this. Larry wanted a snack when they returned. She wanted a brownie, and Asher added that the brownie should have ice cream on top. Suddenly, Brother Larry called her, told her she looked happy, and then greeted Duke Candle. Poor Larry was very scared. She wondered what he would be doing here, how he was going to humiliate her, what he meant. Larry didn't want him to insult her in front of Asher. She doesn't want him to see how her family treats her. And she doesn't want Asher to feel sorry for her. So she asked Asher to go back first, and she was going to talk a little with her brother. However, Asher said he could wait for her, but Larry replied that it might take a long time. And Asher still agreed. Brown laughed at Larry because she called him by his name and asked her to now live wagging her tail in front of the monster Duke. Larry replied that he should watch his mouth if he didn't want to be buried in the backyard of the Imperial Palace. The guy shouted that he had alarmed the whole house and that he lived peacefully. He added that he was a disgrace to his family, and that his mother got sick because of her. He continued complaining that if she thinks the whole world will be at her feet just because she has a magical talent, or something like that, then she is very wrong. That's why the insolent guy told her to go home, because many things had accumulated there. But Larry was not going to tolerate his impudence any longer, and said that she didn't care and that she would let him take care of his own business. The madman got angry and punched Larry in the face, in front of everyone. Then he shouted that the younger sister shouldn't try to be better than her older brother. There is no need to try, with a nobody like him. Larry stood up, thinking that if they continued massacring here, rumors would spread. And then they might reach the Duke's ears. The girl got angry. She didn't want Asher to find out that her brother was beating her, because she would be very ashamed. So she approached him and, saying that the Blanche line would end with him, she hit him between the legs. And when this loser lay curled up on the floor, she added confidently that he had nothing to use there anyway. Then she ran away. Larry went to the healer to heal her cheek, which was already swollen after Rayon's blow. She waited about 2 hours for this. The healer checked the wound, and it turned out that his bone was damaged. Larry was not happy with the result of the healing. The girl told him that this was all she could do, and that she needed to burn more and call a high-level priest or healer. Then she went out onto the street. She has no money, so getting treatment is more difficult, and she was ashamed to appear before Asher like this. While wandering the city, not knowing what to do next, Madame Charbot approached her, who asked her what she was doing here alone and at this hour. Madame immediately noticed how sad Larry was, and, taking her hand, invited her to go to her boutique, explaining that thanks to Larry she had donated many dresses, so she wanted to thank her. Once in the boutique, she put a bow on her and said that this novelty is quite popular. And if you change the hairstyle a little, it will look even prettier. Madame understood everything perfectly and told Larry that while doing business, she met many people, and that everyone had their own story. And there are customers who come to the boutique after a hard day, and there are those who come after an exhausting week. She added that perhaps Lady Blanche also had a very hard day today. But she hopes the rest of this day passes without worries, and tomorrow will definitely be more fun. Then Larry started crying and thanked the lady. Larry said she recognized her, and Madame replied that they had never met before. So now she would introduce herself properly. Until now, she had no reason to see Madame Charbot because she has a very close relationship with the princess. And the princess and Rayon were engaged for some time. Although they later separated, the princess immediately ended the marriage after several encounters with Rayon. And it is clear without words why. Since Larry was Rayon's family, she couldn't approach either the princess or Madame Charbot. Larry told her that she was no longer Blanche and asked her to simply call her Lariette. Thanks to leaving the Blanche house, today she had a friend when she returned to the estate. The butler ran to meet her asking if she was okay. Everyone started running and saying that the lady had come and everyone should return. Everyone was worried that she had been out for so long. Larry didn't expect this at all. And then Asher immediately ran towards her. He clearly couldn't find a place for himself and immediately asked her if she was okay while Larry apologized for being late. She lied, saying she hadn't seen her family in quite some time. She had done some shopping at the boutique, which is why time had passed so quickly. Asher replied that he was worried, and when he pulled her towards him, his smile immediately disappeared upon noticing her wound. He asked again who did it, who dared to touch her face. Larry was worried if she should say that she didn't remember who did it, or that she had fallen. Asher professionally said that she was beaten. At least 6 hours passed after that, and a low-level healer was also working on her wound. Larry was very surprised and wondered how he found out about this, although this is not surprising, because he himself beat people more than once. Then he asked what would happen to the person who hurt her, and Asher didn't even try to hide the fact that he wouldn't be fine. Therefore, Larry decided not to tell him, apologized for worrying him, and said that she would handle everything herself. In fact, she was just ashamed to tell the truth, but Asher came to meet her and told her that he would then ask the priest to heal her properly. However, in his office, Asher called Gerard. This guy is the leader of the Shadow Squad, the Knight, and Asher ordered him to find out everything. Then Gerard immediately disappeared, and Asher continued wondering who attacked Larry and what happened after he left. He decided that he needed to find out what happened at Monsieur Blanche. He was very worried that because of these worries, Larry might get sick again. The main hall of the temple is a very important meeting of the year, attended only by high priests. Suddenly, the door to the hall opened slightly, and Joshua called Doha. But the man started shouting that he hadn't seen that the meeting was still ongoing. Then he addressed Doha and said that High Priest Michael, no matter how influential he is, if he is unable to control his pupils, then he can consider himself ignorant. And Doha replied that he really should take care of his subordinates, since one of them is saying this to his face. Then the man felt embarrassed, but still muttered that he was older than him to serve in the temple. But Doha just asked since when status among priests was calculated by age. And called Joshua. Joshua approached him and whispered that a letter had arrived from Duke Candle. The sorceress was looking for Michael because she wasn't feeling well. And upon hearing this news, Doha didn't hesitate and apologizing, stood up and left the hall, leaving everyone puzzled. The priests started complaining that he was too young and careless, and that he was unfit to be pope. And everyone continued to propose another pope to take Doha's place. And at that moment, Larry was waiting for him at the lookout point, and when she saw him, she greeted him sweetly. Doha immediately approached, looked at her wound, and angrily asked who did it. Larry didn't expect this and wondered why both reacted this way. And Doha started the treatment and asked if Duke Candle had done it. Of course, Larry immediately replied that it wasn't so. And Doha said that if he had hit someone, that person wouldn't be alive anymore. So Doha again asked who did it, but Larry remained silent and wondered who it would be if she didn't talk. He wondered who dared to touch the girl, who was protected by the future pope and military leader, Duke Candle. Doha decided that since she was silent, he would find out everything himself and finish this brave man if the Duke didn't get to him first. He asked her not to hurt herself again and thought that she was the only one who could heal him, just as he could heal her, and it would be a shame if she died. Then he sat next to her and asked her to extend her hand. Then he put a bracelet with divine power on her. It has a healing effect. Larry was delighted with such a gift. She wondered if she could use something so precious. She shed tears and thanked him, but said she had nothing for him. To which Doha just laughed. Then he asked her to spend time with him next time. And even a fraction of his time would be enough for him. The bracelet controls her health from time to time, but it will also call him when she feels threatened. He thought that she shouldn't thank him because he lied to her. In the office, Asher, however, started reading that book. About relationships, recommendation for a wonderful relationship with the same person. It is important to establish physical relationships, and fast progress quickly tires. Asher immediately imagined how this would make Larry tell him she hated him and wanted to break up. Again, he started fearing that no one would love a monster like him, but these were the words of the woman who cursed at him. Asher thought that he could never separate from Rietta and asked her not to leave him. A little later, Larry started treating him and thought it was good that they did it in his office and not in bed like last time. She thought she wasn't ready for such a turn of events. And Asher only calmed down by repeating that he should have patience. Larry finished and Asher asked her if she was okay, and Larry replied that she was a little tired. Asher thought it would be too greedy to want something with such a body. Moreover, so that Larry wouldn't get tired of him, he shouldn't bother her with this ugliness. This is the only thing he can do to prevent Larry from leaving. And suddenly, Larry showed him the book and asked him if he wanted to cook it together. She said she wanted to try it with her boyfriend. Asher pushed her away, saying she was too close. But Larry took his hand and kissed him, making him blush, and asked him if he liked the idea. The perfect kitchen, ready for a sweet couple. Upon entering the kitchen, Larry asked him if he wanted to put on an apron. But Asher refused, imagining such an image. Asher thought he should talk to her about this now, then it might be too late. Because he cannot trust only himself. His body is so terrible that he is afraid to touch her. He is afraid that she will get tired of him. That's why he wanted to develop the relationship more slowly. But the embarrassed Asher could only ask what if they waited a little. Larry, who thought he was talking about cooking, calmly and quickly agreed, and said that he shouldn't be afraid to say something like that. They started cooking together and had a great time. This is their happy moment. After preparing the dessert, they sat at the table and Larry handed Asher a strawberry. And he ate it, although he was embarrassed. The kiss they shared, after drinking, was not romantic enough to call it their first kiss. And Asher thought that now was the perfect time for another kiss. At first he leaned in to kiss her, but then he stopped. He can kill people easily, but a simple kiss makes him very ashamed. He was afraid of getting tired of her quickly and didn't know what to do. He thought that she didn't take his request seriously, and that means he was the only one worried about it. He felt ashamed and offended at the same time. He lowered his head, and Larry got worried and asked him if he was okay. But Asher, without answering her, stood up, wiped his lips with a napkin, and ran away quickly. The next morning, she thought that today she would definitely talk to him. She didn't understand why he had run away, but she wasn't afraid of getting along with a wild animal. She decided to approach him little by little and thought that he would no longer run away from her. She sat at the table where Asher was already sitting reading a newspaper. He greeted her like a sorceress, but she didn't like it and asked him why he called her that again. Asher wasn't looking at her and was reading the newspaper, so Larry asked him if he was angry. Ash replied that no, but Larry was not calmed by this answer. Larry, noticing how embarrassed he was, laughed, calling him cute, and Asher hid behind his newspaper, thinking that he was acting childish because she ignored his request. But the big problem is that he melted as soon as she called him cute. Even if she thinks so, that might change in the future. And Larry thought that after such a thing, Asher could be called a bloodthirsty killer, because she saw the sweet Asher in front of her. Then she asked that he really couldn't tell her the reason for his anger. Asher thought that if he confessed everything, then she might be disappointed in him and leave him. After all, Larry is the one everyone will definitely love. He should be grateful to her all his life just because she looked at him, but this time he couldn't stay silent, because she might get tired of him and leave. Therefore, he decided that he could tell her everything, and said that time she took his request lightly. She said that yesterday she told him to slow down. She was surprised and asked if he wasn't talking about the culinary pace. Larry said it was the first time she cooked, so she thought he was worried about that. Only now did she realize that he was talking about their relationship. She moved the table towards him again and started pushing him, saying that he was offended because she didn't listen to his request. And Asher only felt more ashamed. Larry laughed and reminded him that last time, he himself said he wouldn't give up on her. Asher was embarrassed and wanted to run away, but Larry took his hand and asked if he wanted to run away from her again. So Asher asked her to let go of his hand. If those people who call him a monster saw him now, their world would collapse. And as soon as Larry relaxed her grip, Asher quickly made a mistake. Asher himself thought that even though he acted miserably, it was too much for him. After that day, Larry ran after him and bothered him with questions, as if she should ask his permission before taking his hand. Larry continued to mock him, asking if he would get lost on his way home. She joked that he should already be running away from her out of shame at work. He replied that it wasn't so, and then they said goodbye. But it turned out he didn't go to work, but came to Jard's team and asked if he had told Larry that he had gone to the palace. And Asher replied that he shouldn't know. Asher opened the door, and his brother Larry lay on the floor, already beaten and tied up. And Asher greeted the heir of the Blanchett family. He hit him and told him that he still hadn't realized because he dared to hit Larry. A person whom he is so dear to that he is afraid to touch is very brave for someone like him. After defeating Rayon, he told him to remember that the reason he showed him mercy was because Larry didn't allow him to do so. During dinner, Larry realized that while she was bothering Asher, she had forgotten something very important that she wanted to say exactly with waiting. This man would like to have sex with him. Well, you get the idea. As long as his body is healthy. They signed a contract for 3 months, and 10 weeks remained in total. So Larry asked how slow he wanted to mean. Asher asked her if she meant the progress in the relationship, and replied that he wanted to take it as slowly as possible. But Larry stood up and said she wanted to do this with him as soon as possible, and the butler quickly ushered the girls out of the hallway to leave them alone. Left alone, Asher confusingly asked what she meant by this. Larry replied that she was talking about kissing, hugging, and so on, but Asher stopped her by putting a bow in her mouth and saying that, as she knew, his body was slowly rotting. The skin is torn, and the area around the heart is covered with scars. Such an ugly sight that he is called a monster. He thought that if she ran away after seeing everything, it would be incredibly painful for him. Asher admitted that it was still difficult for him to be intimate with her. And then Larry said that she had no choice but to work harder to remove Asher's curse. Larry took his hands and said that she took good care of Asher, and that she would also try to lift the curse as soon as possible. Then Asher could decide to do it without hesitation. Strangely enough, the moment he heard these words, his heart began to beat fast. It felt like it was about to explode, and he felt a sensation unknown to him before. In his room, Larry thought she needed to clean him quickly, but first she needed to clean the upper part of his body. Even she had a hard time cleaning him. Larry was angry at whoever put such a terrible curse on him. It must have been very difficult for Asher to live with this curse all this time. Even going out with her is not easy for him. And then she wondered if she was his first love. She didn't want a serious relationship, she just wanted to date for 3 months. The next day she was taking care of the butler, and when he realized this, he asked her if she wanted to ask him something. She asked him if he noticed how he followed her, and he replied that this was the main skill of a butler. Larry didn't understand how surveillance related to butlers. Larry said she wanted to ask something about Escher, and the butler happily asked her what she wanted to ask about wealth. How much happiness could guarantee the Duchess's happiness? But she stopped him and asked if Asher was still in a relationship. The butler worried and thought he should answer correctly for the sake of the future successor. Therefore, he decided to tell a white lie and replied that although he didn't know the details, he didn't believe such a thing had happened. After talking to him, Larry walked happily down the hallway and suddenly noticed Asher, and immediately attacked him with hugs. She asked him if he was coming towards her, and he replied yes. So she asked him for a hug because he said hugs were allowed. Asher got embarrassed and said that there were people in the hallway who could see them and suggested next time. And then Larry dragged him into the closet where Asher hugged her, and suddenly Larry felt something and thought that maybe she had a sword. Asher himself understood everything and pushed her aside, saying that was enough. Asher hoped she wouldn't notice anything. Our Larry understood everything perfectly. She was happy that she didn't have to worry about the curse on the lower part of his body, because she had been thinking about it all last night. After the hug, Asher noticed that lately she had been wearing this bracelet a lot. And Larry, without thinking, quickly replied that it was a gift from Doha. But she quickly realized that she couldn't talk about it so calmly. Asher's head was in complete chaos. But then he remembered a book that said that if he was too jealous too often, his partner might not like it. And Asher did everything to show that he wasn't jealous. While Larry calmed him down by telling him that gift was made with Doha's divine magic for health. Asher interrupted her, saying he understood everything perfectly. He gathered his courage and said it was okay if she spent time with him in his absence. This made Larry very happy, and she hugged him again. The next day, the sad cat said that problems had arisen in the empire, and he was called to the palace for an emergency meeting. Larry bid him farewell and wished him a good day, but noticed that he hesitated and asked if he needed. And it was to the bathroom. But Asher took out an envelope of his that contained a gift for Larry and put it in her hair. Larry didn't expect this, but she perfectly understood that apparently he was jealous of the bracelet. And Asher continued smiling sweetly at her. Asher said goodbye to her, hugging Larry, and then Doha came and saw the decoration and said it was very beautiful. Larry said they would have fun today, and Doha asked if her lover would mind. But Larry replied that he said everything was fine. Doha was annoyed by this, but of course pretended everything was fine. And after the treatment, they went to the city. This time, Larry prepared and took the money, and said that last time Doha paid, and that today it was his turn. Larry said she would buy him whatever he wanted. And Doha said he wanted the bracelet they saw last time. And Larry agreed. In the end, they went to that store and she bought a gift for Doha for Larry when he couldn't put on the bracelet. Larry helped him. Doha thanked him for the gift and noticed that he had something else in his hands. Larry replied that it was a gift for her lover. It's over, Doha was upset, but he said nothing, and Doha said that lately there have been strange rumors. He heard that Duke Candle cut off Marquis Seger's hand in the theater. They said he was trying to harm the Duke's partner. And when asked if she was that sweet companion, Larry started to worry what she would do if her parents found out about this. She was afraid they would ask Asher to take her away. This scared Larry a lot, and Doha realized this. Doha pulled her towards him and told her everything would be fine. Larry apologized because they were supposed to have fun today. But Doha replied that everything would be fine for her and asked her to trust him. After all, he was Milady's personal priest. Larry asked how a low-ranking priest could be so sure. Doha laughed and asked if that was the reason she was ignoring him now. Doha again asked her to trust him. He said that Milady had become friends with the most trustworthy priest and that he would protect her at any moment. And while they continued talking sweetly, suddenly the building nearby collapsed, and debris flew in their direction. Larry started using her skills. She only knew the basics of protective magic, so the shield might turn out unpleasant. But it's not a fact that both can survive. Realizing that her friend might die, she thought she herself would die soon anyway. But he didn't and decided to save Doha. She surrounded him with many shields because she decided that if she applied several layers of magic, she could save him. And as soon as she could completely surround him with magic, she turned around and prepared for her death. And the last person she thought of was Asher. But when Larry opened her eyes, she saw that Doha was blocked by debris. Doha got annoyed and asked her if she was crazy. And Larry replied that the main thing was that he wasn't hurt, and asked him not to make any sudden movements. If the shield weakened, they would be crushed by the debris. Larry told him that she still controlled the magic, and then Doha couldn't stand it. And for the first time showed Larry his abilities by lifting all the debris. Then he asked her why she did this. Why did she throw magical shields only at him? Larry didn't understand why he was angry. She thought that she didn't have much time left, and that Doha's safety was more important. Larry told Doha that she did it because they were friends. Doha didn't expect this at all and thought she must be crazy. She risked her life to protect him, whom she had only seen a few times. Doha denied altruism. He believed that everyone pretends to be good only when they want to gain some benefit. And already a priest, he wondered if it was really about friendship. One way or another, both are alive. She was covered in bruises, but when asked if she was okay, she said that he coldly took care of this debris. They stood up and Doha asked if anything hurt her. Larry only asked how he was, and Doha replied that he was surrounded by many shields. So it didn't hurt him. Doha was very worried because Larry was hurt, but she pretended it wasn't so. Therefore, he quickly started treating her and asked if she understood that she almost died. Larry replied that everything was fine because everyone dies sooner or later. Doha got angry and said she couldn't die and that he wouldn't allow that to happen. He could forgive her for thinking of another man when she was by his side, because she still had many opportunities. But she couldn't die without his permission. And he asked her not to be reckless with her wounds. Larry thought he must have been in shock. Doha looked at the debris and thought that no matter how old the building was, it couldn't collapse out of nowhere. Larry was surprised to see Doha like this, because she had never seen him so irritated. Night fell and Larry returned home and saw Asher, and ran happily towards him. Asher had started returning early from work for her sake. She hugged him tightly, telling him this was her hug quota for today. And Asher reminded her that this was what she said in the morning, but Larry replied that she didn't know what he was talking about. But her sweet hug ended quickly. Asher asked if anything had happened to her today. Asher started to say that he smelled a faint smell of dust in her hair. Her abilities sometimes scared him. Larry knew that telling the truth would cause an uproar, and she didn't like Asher worrying about her. So Larry smiled and told him that she had simply fallen under the road. That's probably why she smelled like that. She asked him if he was hurt, and Larry replied that Doha had already treated her, and then asked if he had fun. She said she had fun, but she had more fun with Asher. Larry thought about how cute he was, and that she needed to quickly remove the curse from him. Because Asher was suffering a lot because of the curse. She sincerely wants him to get rid of it as soon as possible. As long as she is here, these 3 months, she wants him to enjoy his time with her. Larry felt this when she was on the verge of death. After her death, Asher would be forced to continue living with this curse. She cannot allow this to happen, so she must free Asher from the curse at any cost. So she started treating him, but Asher was still worried and asked her if she was okay. And Larry said she was fine. Although this is not the case, she spent all her energy creating protective barriers for Doha. But she wanted to free Asher from the curse as quickly as possible. But her strength was completely depleted, and she fell onto Asher and weakly said she was cold. Asher hugged her tightly and told her that she needed to be covered with something. Asher picked her up, and Larry said she wanted to take a bath, and Asher said he would ask the maids to prepare the bath immediately. However, Larry didn't want to be with people she couldn't trust. So she asked him to help her with this, asked him to stay with her, and added that she would be dressed. Asher was worried because Larry seemed sick. He thought Larry was treating him, despite the pain, so he decided that now was not the time to be ashamed. So they came to the bathroom. Larry was in pajamas, and Larry was shouting if she had to sit on them. And Asher, embarrassed, replied that he definitely had to. Asher was already completely blushing, and Larry, just in case, took his hand and told him that she was warning him that if he ran away again, she would run away too. This is exactly what Asher fears the most. He turned to her and terribly asked her how she could say such a thing. His eyes were fierce. Right now, you can understand why so many people are afraid of him. Although Larry was scared, she quickly decided that it was worth playing a joke, and said that she meant within the mansion, as for catching up. So Asher apologized for making a mistake and told her that he was already wondering if he should tie her up in this case. Stalker. But Larry decided that she was joking like this. She laughed and said that it turns out she likes to joke. Then she looked at him with a seductive look. And then she asked Asher if he wanted to help her wash. Asher was already worried, but then Larry said she was asking him to help her wash her hair. Asher untied her long pink hair and started washing it, and when he picked it up, he noticed the scar on her neck and asked her where she got it from. Larry said that when she was a child, Rayon accidentally pushed her and she fell down the stairs. But he told their parents that she was the first one to push him, so they scolded her afterwards. Because a lady should not play on the stairs. Asher already regretted not killing him that time, and Larry continued saying that she was locked in her room as punishment. Larry said she remembers looking at the door all the time and wondering if it would open. The girl sat crying and thought that her mother had said this would make her more patient. So she just needed to be patient. The poor girl was forced to keep waiting, accused of a crime she did not commit. Then Larry asked if his hair didn't disgust her. Someone just told her that his eyes hurt just looking at them. It was her ex-fiancé. Asher didn't answer and asked her to tell him who told her that. Just his name, and he would tear out his lying tongue. Larry laughed and asked to answer her question, and Asher simply asked how he could feel disgust for them. And Larry smiled and asked if that meant he liked them, and then asked what else he found beautiful. And Asher replied that everything about her was beautiful, and Larry replied that if so, then he should kiss the place he considered most beautiful. Asher waited a little, and, taking a strand of her hair and kissing it, said there was nothing about her that he would consider unattractive. Then he kissed her hand and asked if that meant he should kiss every part of her body. Larry replied that then she would let him choose the place he most felt like kissing. Hearing this, Asher pulled her towards him and kissed her on the lips. He started kissing Larry with more confidence. A few days later, they went to a boutique. Larry asked him if he would help her choose clothes, and Asher replied that he was sure Madame Charbot would do an excellent job with her. Larry got angry and shouted, "Why is it so hard for him to help with this?" but only she turned out to be hurt, and Asher sarcastically thanked her for the massage. But while Larry was cursing him, Asher noticed that Gerard, who had been watching them all this time, realized that something serious had happened and told Larry that he would leave for a while. So Larry entered the boutique alone, and a worker immediately approached her and asked her if she could wait a little. It turned out that Larry's mother was in the same boutique. Larry didn't greet her confidently, and her mother approached. It was clear that Larry was not comfortable. Her mother shouted where she had been all this time. She assured him that she had been nervous all this time. Larry immediately realized her lie and said directly that despite this, she goes for aromatic oil massages in boutiques. Moreover, throughout this time, Larry hasn't seen a single announcement that she is being sought. Now she won't naively believe her mother's words, clever girl. So her mother couldn't answer anything. Like saying she couldn't do anything, Larry got angry at her mother's open lies. And Larry told her not to make excuses, that she could, but she didn't bother doing anything. She couldn't take it anymore and ran out of the boutique crying, but Asher stopped her. Seeing her tears, he immediately asked who dared to make her cry while he wiped her tears. But Larry lied, saying she didn't cry, she just missed Asher and hugged him. Asher knew perfectly well she was lying. Asher suggested going home, but Larry wondered if she even had a home. She was already happy to have a terminal illness. A few days later, Asher noticed that Larry had been acting quite strange lately before leaving. Asher himself asked for the day's hug quota. Larry, depressed, nodded and sadly hugged him and left. This is what Asher meant. He would like to be close to her. But today, an important military meeting is being held at the palace, which he is obliged to attend. He would like her to tell him everything, because she is his lover. At that moment, Larry was sitting by the balcony and reading a letter in which it was written that he regretted that this became his first letter to Lariette. She only did this because the Duchess begged her. But she promises him this will not happen again. The letter was from Genevieve Charbet, and Larry started reading her mother's letter, in which she wrote that she regretted that their meeting ended this way. She would like to tell him many things. In the letter, she asked to give her another chance. It said that today she would be waiting for her at the restaurant at 5 p.m. Larry, angry, crumpled her mother's letter and sadly asked why she should see her now. Poor girl. Some mothers take advantage of their position and deliberately torture their children. And of course, the child will want to go back to his mother, because children always expect a good relationship with their mother, even with someone like her. When Larry sat down at the table, her mother jokingly handed her the plate and told her to try it. That even if it was cold, it should be delicious. However, Larry remembered how he used to shout at her to know when to eat moderately. Because at that rate, she would get fat and become scary, and Rayon would hate eating with her. That's why, from that moment on, they brought food to her chambers, and Larry said that in the letter she wrote she wanted to tell him something. Her mother replied that she had much to apologize for, so she didn't know where to start. But above all, she regretted not paying her due attention. She stated that she realized she was dear to her only when she lost her. And when she left home, she was in great shock. Nobody cares about her. And her father constantly scolds her, saying she is not a housewife. It seems he should have apologized to Larry, but until now, he only feels sorry for himself. The Duchess said that now she realized everything. She was the only person who was with her in difficult times. How mean. Of course, this greatly saddened Larry, while her mother kept complaining about her personal problems. And how unhappy she was. Larry finally realized that her mother didn't even think about the pain she was causing her. She said she listened to him, but that she had no plans to return to his house, and before leaving, her mother said she was very sorry. Larry didn't understand what her mother meant, but when she turned around, many hands emerged from the shadows, knocking her out and restraining her. Her mother betrayed Larry again, and old Bill told her they couldn't bring her daughter back. That she had run away from home, not even with an apology. When Larry woke up, she was already handcuffed. And not with simple ones, but with ones that block her magic. These monsters handcuffed their daughter. She hadn't had a bite in her mouth since last night, so her strength was completely dried up. Poor Poor Larry was locked in the room again, in front of the huge door. She thought she would never get out now. When suddenly Anne knocked on the door and asked how she was, Anne said sadly that she must be hungry. Larry lied, saying she was fine, and asked how Anne felt. She replied what they were doing now. Friends desperately trying to help each other. Anne said the Duke seemed terribly angry. He shouted loudly that she wouldn't recover by morning. This didn't even surprise Larry. Then Anne burst into tears and said she would definitely find a way to help her. Larry asked her not to do anything, she was worried about her. Anne said that, when Larry left the estate, she was very worried she wouldn't be able to do anything for her. She said she didn't want to regret anything, so she asked her to help her somehow. That's why she decided to talk to the wizard Sheol and steal the key from him. Larry was worried about her friend and asked her not to do anything. But Anne had already run away anyway and simply sat by the door. But when her father opened the door, she fell to the floor. Larry saw Rayon's face, which was beaten, and immediately thought that even though she didn't know the details, she was sure he deserved it. The Marquis said he locked her up so she would think about her behavior, but he doesn't see a drop of remorse in her eyes. Larry stood up and told him directly that she had nothing to regret, and confidently said she had done nothing wrong. Then the crazy father hit Larry the first time. Then he grabbed her and hit her harder the second time. To Larry, his blows seemed like a storm. Larry fell to the floor, and the Marquis told her that he had spent a lot on her, and in return, she dared to run to the monster Duke, and now she despises her father. The little bastard backed off and gloated over his sister's pain, while the Marquis shouted that he dared to put that bastard, that is, Asher, over her brother. The Marquis added that if she didn't apologize, she wouldn't see freedom, and he left. Then Bill Rayon approached the beaten Larry. He lifted her up and asked if she realized how much he was hurt because of her. Larry looked at him with a fierce look, a look similar to Asher's. Larry quickly bit her hands until they bled and the cowardly boy fell, and immediately began to tremble. He immediately ran out shouting that they should lock her up immediately, and that after living with the Duke. She had also gone crazy. Standing at the door was Joel, the wizard and master of this house. He looked at Larry before closing the door. Larry lay on the cold floor, hungry, beat. She remembered happy moments with Asher, and crying, said she missed him. Suddenly, Anne shouted that he had arrived, and already downstairs, Duke Candle came to look for Larry. The Marquis quickly ran downstairs to Asher and began to ask him with disgust why he hadn't announced his arrival in advance. He complained that this went against etiquette rules. Gerard rudely asked if he knew who he was talking to, and Asher said he was here to pick up his lover. The Marquis asks him to dare to show up here and declares that he is going to steal his daughter from him. Asher said he didn't want any trouble and that he would do what he said if he gave Larry back to him. Larry was in her room. She got up and asked what Anne was talking about, and if it was true that Asher had come specifically for her. Anne said that Joel wrote a letter to the Duke and sent it to him secretly. Larry went to the window and saw Asher and decided she shouldn't just stand there and tear down the curtains. After breaking the window, she called Escher and simply jumped off the balcony. Her teacher quickly placed a shield next to her to protect her, and Escher extended his arms to catch her. Having caught Larry, he looked at her face and, seeing the bruises, asked who dared to touch her. Escher is surrounded by a dark aura that greatly scared the Marquis, who declared that he would have no mercy. But Larry pulled him to her and told him she wanted to go back to his house, and Asher. Smiling, he agreed with her. As they approached the carriage, her father started shouting where they were going, and he fell silent as soon as he saw Asher's look. And Larry thanked her teacher. He was always on her side. He took Larry home, and in bed she asked him to hug her. Asher thought she was very hurt, and at the same time he didn't try to blame her, but even thanked her. Asher was going to raise the Blanchett estate because they dared to take Larry away from him. And he apologized for being so late. Larry asked him if she could kiss him now. She admitted that she really desired it, and Asher replied that he didn't mind at all. And Asher kissed her, then threw her onto the bed, continued kissing her, and when Larry called him softly, he asked her if that was enough for her, but then admitted that he completely missed it and asked if he could continue. Asher said that no matter how much he kissed her, she would never be enough for him himself. He thought that if he could, he would swallow her whole, from head to toe, and make her his. And Larry looked at Asher for the first time and admitted that she loved him. She worried about truly falling in love with Asher, even though she knew how everything would end. And even despite the circumstances, she still fell in love with him and Asher after kissing her. He also admitted that he loved her. Every night in his dreams, there are only thoughts about her. For the first time in his life, he falls asleep anxiously, waiting for dawn. For the first time, he realizes the value of every day her words can send him to heaven or sink him into the depths of hell. When she suffers, his heart breaks and there are no words that can describe his feelings for her. Therefore, he will simply love her truly to the point of madness. Asher climbed onto Larry. Asher wondered if he could do this in his condition. He admitted that he was starting to lose patience. He wanted to dominate her so much. But it's not time yet, so he will restrain himself with all his might. They fear that his curse might contaminate her. They stood up and Larry said she was ready to wait for him as long as necessary. And just as they were about to kiss, the butler approached them. It turns out that Doha had already come to her, and seeing her wounds, asked who dared to do such a thing to her. He said he asked her to be careful, but she seemed not to listen to his words at all, since he noticed she didn't have a bracelet on her wrist. Larry noticed this and, hiding her hand, said she felt sorry for using that bracelet because it was very beautiful. Doha was angry because she was in trouble, but he didn't know, so he pulled her towards him and started the treatment. Before Doha could finish talking about her lover, Larry shouted that he had absolutely nothing to do with it. She said she was simply kidnapped. Doha replied that he hadn't said anything yet, and that he thought just a few days ago he had taken an oath that he would protect her. He thought this hurt his pride, although Duke Candle was also powerless. The treatment quickly helped Larry. Her wounds slowly disappeared, and Doha stood up and asked if she hurt anywhere else. When she replied that everything was fine, he asked her from that moment on to wear this bracelet. Only with constant contact with her skin would its healing properties be realized. It seemed that there were still traces of wounds on her face. Larry replied that everything was fine, only that it was a little swollen. And Doha asked to have a little more patience. The wound was quite strong. Doha thought that he might hate him if he was too persistent. Although for him, it would be even better than nothing. At first, he didn't want anything sublime. Suddenly, she screamed in pain, and Doha asked if she was still hurt somewhere. It turned out that she had fragments of the window stuck to her feet. Doha stood up and asked if she really wanted to leave everything as it was. She thought she didn't want to look like this in Doha's eyes. He should only see beautiful things in her life. When Doha left, Larry approached Asher and told him that after the treatment, she was already much better. Asher said he was worried that it might be too much for her, but he took off his shirt anyway. After that, Asher sat on the bed next to her, and Larry began to treat the upper part of his body. And finally, she said she was done with cleaning the upper body. He could get close to being cleansed of the curse. Asher looked at his body, and, seeing that it was clean, shed tears, and said he was very grateful to her. Larry said it was too early for joy, and that very soon she would completely free him from the curse. To celebrate, she said that now she could clean the lower part of his body, and upon realizing what she was saying, she got embarrassed and wondered how she should do this, because she would have to take off her pants. She nervously said that this time, the cleaning took a long time, so she wanted to rest. And Asher replied that the lower part of his body was fine. This only made the boys listen to him more, but it seems they are talking about different things. Larry turned around embarrassed and thought she could have told him this earlier. Then she returned to her room and lay in bed, thinking that so many things had happened today. She has someone to thank: Asher, Doha, Anne, and Mr. Sheol for helping her escape. Larry wanted to get them out of there, but how could she bring them here if she herself would leave the mansion soon? She regretted that all these years she had foolishly sacrificed herself for the sake of her family. And if she hadn't had a terminal illness, she would have continued living, letting herself be used. She paid a high price for happiness, and that's why she doesn't want to die. She loves his affectionate and subtle jealousy, as well as his sweet side that only she knows. Larry admitted that she really loves Asher, but she doesn't believe he has such strong feelings. Therefore, he surely won't be very angry after her death, and in the future will only remember her. A fleeting girl for 3 months. Suddenly, thunder roared and Larry left her thoughts about Asher when she saw a storm. And her father appeared in front of her, hitting her. Of course it was just an illusion. She got scared and ran out of her room, asked for salvation and ran to Asher's room. Asher said it was cold in the hallway and opened the door for her to enter. She was trembling and they sat on the sofa. He offered her tea. They hadn't brought it yet, but afterwards she could drink it with him. Seeing her condition, Asher asked if she was still hurt somewhere. And Larry replied that she was simply very afraid of thunderstorms. Not even the sound itself, but the loneliness she feels in such weather. Asher listened to her and hugged her because she kept trembling. Suddenly, thunder rumbled with renewed vigor, so loudly that Larry jumped scared into Asher's arms. Asher found it hard to see how his beloved was scared and hugged her tightly to be able to help her somehow. While Asher was hugging Larry, he remembered how during the war one of his knights, upon dying, begged him to save him. After sitting in silence for a while, Larry asked Asher if she could sleep with him tonight. Only holding hands. She, hesitatingly, said it was okay if he couldn't, that she could sleep alone in her room. And she apologized for her strange request. But Asher pulled her towards him and told her she could stay with him. And so they lay together in the same bed, and Larry decided to calm him down, telling him that she wasn't going to do any of that. But then she started pointing her finger at him, trying to tease him, and Asher stopped her and told him not to touch him if he wanted him to restrain himself. Try not to show it, but he is afraid and pretends everything is fine for her. Asher wondered why she kept enduring everything alone and couldn't trust him. He would like to share his experiences with her, and then maybe he too can calm down. Meanwhile, on Larry's father's estate, dishes were breaking and shouts were heard. He asked why no one was coming to them. And the butler replied that they had contacted the temple again, but there were no free priests. Immediately after Larietta's kidnapping, Jard said that the lady had many wounds. Something she certainly didn't have yesterday. The Marquis thought that if he didn't want to become famous as a despot who beat his own daughter, it would be better to let her go now. And while they were talking, Jard noticed Rayon coming down the stairs, who also noticed Jard. Rayon fell and broke both legs. The man thought that Larietta's powers would be useful now. She is not there when needed so much. And he had no choice but to go to the temple himself, where he was already shouting at the priests to help them. At that moment, Doha arrived, who was already waiting for his turn to recover. By the way, Larry's father knew very well that Doha was the next pope. That's why he decided it wasn't worth conflicting with the person who would hold such an honorable position. However, Rayon, who had no manners, started being rude to him, which was quickly stopped by the Duke. Apologizing for his son's lack of tact, the Duke said that his son urgently needed treatment. They came here out of extreme necessity. It was Doha who didn't allow any of the priests to approach them, but told them that there seemed to be some kind of misunderstanding. Doha told them that, as an apology, he would personally treat his son. The Duke's eyes lit up at this offer, because not even Duke Candle can boast of receiving treatment directly from the supervising father. He was already planning to establish a relationship with the next pope, so he wanted to glorify his family again. Before Rayon went after Doha, his father told him not to shame him. They went to another hall, and Doha asked him how he got hurt, and Rayon replied that he stumbled. Then Doha suddenly grabbed his hand and asked him where he got this wound from. Seeing the bite mark, he thought that even Larry's bite looked cute. Doha decided that he shouldn't leave a single trace of Larry on him and Rayon, instead of thanking him. He called him a type of despicable origin. He asked if he knew what rumors were circulating about him. Calling him an impudent fool, he meant that Doha was the son of a fallen courtesan. This didn't hurt him at all, and Doha said that Duke Candle did a bad job. Doha approached him and asked how he dared, out of ignorance, to invade someone who should not have been touched. He shouldn't expect mercy from him. At a minimum, he should deprive him of his limbs, and that wouldn't be the harshest punishment. Doha stated. Rayan tried to hit Doha and, of course, failed. As always, he blamed everyone else for everything. This even made Doha laugh. Doha asked him if he really thought that a guy with a despicable background wouldn't escape his unfortunate attack. He said this was nothing compared to what he had to endure to survive. And Rayan said he was dizzy. Rayan started complaining about what he did to him. Doha sat calmly and said that he had only slightly altered his mana cycle. If everything is left behind as it is, then in a few months the flow of mana in his body will not be able to withstand it. And he will die like Larry, only with him everything is real. Doha found this amusing and continued, saying that healing is impossible for anyone who is not stronger than him and, of course, such people do not exist. He threatened that he needed to go crazy quickly with young Lord Blanchett. And Ron started getting hysterical, thinking he didn't want to die. So all his arrogance disappeared, and he asked what he had to do, and Doha replied that if he raised his hand against Larry, he would die that day. But returning to our couple, Larry woke up and saw Asher, who had already gotten up. Larry thought that seeing such a beautiful face in the morning was the best thing in the world. Larry noticed that he looked a little tired and asked him if he had slept well, if he had at least slept a few hours. Of course, Asher couldn't sleep, but he told her that nothing had happened and asked what she planned to do today. She said she was going to Doha, and that now she would only sleep with Asher. This last one really confused our shy one. Of course, she was joking and showed us the reason why Asher couldn't sleep all night. He thought he couldn't stand this again. Asher hurried and left the room, where the butler was already waiting for him, who was already happily saying that he had always believed that this day would come. He asked what dishes to prepare for the wedding banquet, on what date the ceremony would be scheduled. And all that. They couldn't stop him anymore. Asher silenced him and asked him to stop when he started talking about the baby's room. Halstein said that marriage is an important event for a person. He shouldn't treat it with negligence. However, Asher thought it was funny. He believed that no one would want to connect their life with someone like him. But he would wish to marry her, to get married. Asher would have sworn that he was willing to spend eternity with her, but of course, it was too early for that. He turned around and said he hadn't done anything yet that he had to be responsible for. Then he added that he had work to do, so he needed to quickly prepare to leave. This surprised Butler Halstein, who decided that Escher was too naive to understand everything, because he had spent his whole life on the battlefield. And Halstein decided that he needed to help the master. It seems he had already started building his plan. And Larry decided to come to Doha's temple. She said she had come to see a friend, and the priest asked her what rank her friend was. And Larry replied that she was the lowest. She started describing what Doha looked like in Joshua, who was running as fast as he could. He said he would accompany her. Larry thought he was a low-ranking priest, but he lived in such luxurious rooms that she assumed he earned little. Doha quickly changed his clothes and ran to her, asking what she was doing here. Larry replied that it was a surprise. Larry said she wanted to thank him for yesterday's treatment and that she also had a request for him. Doha was already annoyed when he thought she was still befriending him for personal gain. But Larry asked him to teach her how to use her magic. Divine power and mana are similar in nature. It is about purification magic. She said she was never taught how to use magic, so she couldn't handle it properly. Larry doesn't want her to remain as helpless as she is. She wants to defend herself. She said that he is the only one she can turn to, so she can only entrust her training to him. Doha replied that he agreed, but in return he would ask her to fulfill his request later. And cunningly asked her if she would fulfill it, no matter what it was. Larry said it sounded like a scam, and asked what would happen if his request was to write his name on her butt, and then dance or sing in the street. Doha laughed and agreed that the contract should be fair, and suggested that it be agreed that it would be a request within her capabilities. And the rest will be decided by Larry's conscience, Doha added, and asked if the conditions he offered were normal enough. And Larry agreed. And she happily asked, what if they started training today? Doha thought he was interested in Larry. He would like to get closer to her and learn everything about her. In the end, he might lose interest, but the meal always starts with something tasty. And just as he was about to agree, Joshua approached them and announced that he was expected. Doha realized that the current father had come, apologized to Larry, and she replied that she herself had come so unexpectedly, and that it was not his fault. He said he would visit her soon. Upon returning from Doha, he thanked the elder for his quarters. Poor Joshua was already completely confused. Larry thought she was in a really difficult situation since she even borrowed a room. A naive girl decided that she would no longer come to him so unexpectedly. And while Joshua and Doha were greeting her, Doha whispered that he was playing poorly. Joshua replied that he was still far from Mikkel's ability, and Doha said that this is the main ability of those who serve in the temple. Then they returned to their work. Joshua said that High Priest Ibram was looking for him, and Doha complained that he would bother him again with his complaints. Doha thought that perhaps the current father was not in the best condition. He wants to talk about being the next one, memorizing that this will be a test. Upon returning home, Larry jumped into Asher's arms and told him that they had arrived at the same time. That it seemed like fate. Asher felt embarrassed and thought the day was boring. But as soon as he saw Larry, he immediately felt happy. He thought he felt this way because she was a purification mage. He decided that perhaps she had cleansed their hearts of troubles. And then the butler began his plan, saying that he had assigned the new maids to wash the blankets. But they were not dry yet. Continuing his game, Hulstein said that the knight's blanket was fine. But the lady's blanket was different. But Escher offered to buy a new one immediately. And Halstein lied, saying that they called all the boutiques, but found nothing suitable for the duchy. And that it would take several days to supply a new one. He didn't stop and said that they couldn't give the lady a low-quality blanket. Asher thought that was nonsense and ordered that only his blanket be given to her. Things didn't go as Halstein wanted when Larry said that then she would sleep without a blanket. And Asher replied that everything was fine, that it was a cold night, and that she could catch a cold without a blanket. And then Halstein finally suggested that they sleep together. Larry replied that it was a good idea. But after seeing Asher's reaction, she asked him if he really didn't want to sleep together. Asher only got more embarrassed and started saying that he was not against it in any way. But Larry interrupted him and said she wanted to eat. She thought she could bear it for now, everything would be fine. Asher believed that he shouldn't worry too much. Night arrived. Asher was worried and walked around in circles hesitating. And Larry happily came to Asher's room with a delicious gift. They sat at the table, and Asher asked her if she was going to eat it right now. Larry immediately replied that she liked sweets and asked him if he knew what kind of cream it was. She asked him if he liked whipped cream, and Asher replied yes, although he had never tasted it before. Then he gave Larry a piece of cake. Having got messy, she decided to clean everything with a napkin so as not to embarrass Asher. Otherwise, she would simply run away. But Asher pulled her towards him and asked her if it wasn't her lover who should clean him. When Asher kissed her, Larry looked at him and thought it looked as if he was going to eat her. Larry stopped him, saying that it was enough, but Asher kissed her again and told her that he was still hungry. Kissing her for a while, he stopped, smiled, and said that now he seemed to be full. Then he jumped into bed and said that he needed to finish cleaning quickly. Asher also lay down with her and asked her what would happen next, but Larry just wished him good night. Asher watched her sleep and thought that if he continued to be by her side, he wouldn't be able to hide his greed and his ugly possessiveness. Unexpectedly for Asher, Larry pulled him towards her, hugged him, and called him hers. Asher blushed and thought he needed to leave. But as soon as he tried to do this, Larry put her leg over him. Restraining him, Asher couldn't stand it anymore and begged for help. The next morning, Larry seemed cheerful and rested, which cannot be said of Asher, who suffered all night. In front of Larry's table, he found a letter from the butler, in which it said that it had rained heavily in the morning. So the blanket never dried. It seems they will have to sleep together for a couple more days, and they will be brought breakfast to their room. While Larry was satisfied, Asher was already dreaming of being murdered. On the fourth day, Asher finally fell asleep. And now Larry was looking at him and thinking that even when he sleeps, he is so handsome, a national treasure. It seems Asher is tormented by nightmares. He continued to ask for help and call his mother. Larry heard rumors about Asher. The Duke and his wife died when Asher was still very young. And distant relatives immediately attacked the wealth and power of the family, while Asher fought on the battlefield with a cursed body. Larry patted his head thinking that after going through such difficult events at such a young age, the only thing she could do was save him from the curse. She decided that it was imperative to clean him, both in body and mind. She would give him opportunities. The ability to live the happy daily life that others live, even when she is no longer there. It seems she said the last words out loud when Ash heard them and immediately woke up. He took her hand and asked what she had just said. She said she heard her saying she was going to leave him, but Larry pretended not to know what he was talking about. And Ash thought he was imagining things. Larry calmed him down and he asked her to stay by his side, and Larry agreed. And she thought she was glad that he only felt sympathy for him and not love. She thought she would regret parting with him, and until the contract ended, she would stay with him. Morning came and Asher thought he seemed to have had a good sleep, but he didn't remember it. Larry hugged him from behind and asked if he slept well, and said that seeing his condition, it seemed it was time to clean the lower part of his body. He stood up and said that next time he would do the cleaning of the lower body. Since he was going to Madame Sherbet, and asked her if she was going to the imperial castle. Escher thought there might be a war with the Danube kingdom, which would prevent them from spending time together. And Larry asked to do something with her, and Asher asked what she suspected of something. Asher was a little embarrassed, but thought it was unlikely she would ask him for anything strange. And he agreed. But he didn't know what big plans Larry had made, like swimming and visiting hot springs. Larry arrived at Madame Sherbet in the afternoon, and as always, Jard was watching her. He is a trained fighter and commander. But Asher ordered him to protect Larry. Madame apologized for the letter she had sent, and said they had decided not to accept representatives of the Blanche family as guests anymore. Of course, Larry was an exception. They entered a boutique. Larry thought that the Blanche family, in any case, had no money left, so they couldn't afford such boutiques. She noticed that someone was already sitting in the reception area. Larry told Madame she could come next time, but the girl said there was no need to leave. And then added that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Larry greeted Her Highness the Princess. It was awkward meeting her like this, Princess Elizabeth Harrison. One day, the Emperor chose Rayon from the rushed engagement requests with the princess at that time. The Blanchett family had not lost their influence, so Rayon was a worthy match for the princess. But of course, his character betrayed himself. He declared that the princess had raised her nose too high, and Elizabeth asked him if he was somehow better than her. She confidently approached him and told him that he looked more like a boy who was afraid to fight her and lose. And when he dared to shout that it didn't matter if she was stronger than him, because he would still become her husband. And the princess quickly showed who was the boss. Thus the engagement was broken, after which Larry did not see her for about 5 years because she avoided her. But the princess had changed so much in 5 years that Elizabeth said she didn't want to be a burden to her. She didn't know that she and Madame Sherbet were so close. Larry thought that her name was not on the family register anyway, so everything related to it did not apply to her. Elizabeth asked how Madame could have hidden such a person from her, and said that now she was obliged to know Lady Larietta better. The princess approached Larry and told her that she could simply call her Alyssa. Her beauty even influenced Larry. In karate, Larry worried that she wouldn't be here after a while. But she kept making promises like that. She agreed to meet the girls and talk. She was sad because this was the first time this had happened to her. Such good things happened when she was already on the verge of death. In any case, she will have to go on a trip and die quietly so that no one notices. Little by little she fell asleep. And suddenly, Doha opened the carriage door, waking Larry, and he asked her why she hadn't gotten out yet. Doha helped her down and told her that this place has a special energy. There is a fast and pure flow of mana here. This is the best place to practice. And now he asked to use magic, as he usually does. Larry was a little hesitant but still started. She was using earth magic, and Doha thought it was a waste of mana, like pouring all the water from a bathtub just to put out candles. Doha took her hand and told her to put mana into her body. She would have to control its flow. He showed the amount of mana that would be enough to perform the action she had performed earlier. Larry used her magic again, but once again overdid it. Seeing branches falling on Doha, she jumped to save him. Doha thought that even though he is much stronger and more experienced than her, she always tries to save him. Making sure Larry is fine, said she seems to be a genius. He agreed, but added that she still had a lot to learn. She didn't yet know how to attack with magic at long distances. What to do in dangerous situations. Where to aim. How to escape. In general, study and study. Larry happily asked the teacher to teach her everything. At night, Larry went home. Even after a day of training, she feels she is improving in mana control. Doha thought they couldn't train a person with such skills, although she still wasn't particularly interested in this. She felt something and wondered if her skills really awakened such a strong interest in him. Because usually at that time, he gets bored. Then, Doha told Larry that a festival was being held in Isis, a small town not far from the capital. While talking about what was there, Larry interrupted him saying that this place was perfect for her date with Asher. She left, thanking him for today's lesson, and added that she was lucky to have such a friend. Doha said goodbye and immediately became depressed when she left, because he wanted to go to the festival with her alone. He was very upset. Larry went to Asher's room and told him she had good news. That is, a flower festival is being held in Isis, and she asked me to go with her tomorrow. Asher was less optimistic and reminded her of her curse. Then he asked her if this should be what was bothering her now. Larry asked when they could go there once, that he had it completely clean. Then she opened his shirt. She touched him and told him that the curse was no longer on the upper body. Then she asked if they could still go to the festival. Larry explained that she wasn't imposing her wishes on him, but that they could go to the night market and wear costume masks. And still managed to convince Asher to go to this festival. They put on nice masks. She said that then they could go to the square, but for now they still have time to walk. Asher noticed that people looked at him differently here, not with fear or hatred. People looked at him with interest. Realizing this, Asher surprised Larry by telling her that he would also like to give her a bite. He pulled her towards him and kissed her. Larry was not happy about this. She hit him a couple of times, telling him you shouldn't do that in public, and simply left him. She got angry and wondered when he learned to seduce with such skill, but then she thought they had already arrived and decided to go back. But she noticed how a girl approached Asher and offered to dance together. While Asher was rejecting the girl, Larry got worried and started running away again, thinking that if she left, Asher would fall in love with another woman. She thought that the only thing she wanted was Asher's happiness. She decided that she couldn't be jealous. At that moment, a guy approached her and offered her a drink. He explained that he had bought it recently and was about to sign it. He proved that there was nothing wrong with the drink by drinking a little. Then Larry took off her mask and thanked him for his help. When the guy saw Larry's face, he frankly said that it looked like love at first sight. His frankness surprised Larry, who immediately told him that she already had a lover. The man said that they told him that the residents of the capital are very stubbornly refusing to receive him. This turned out to be true. She noticed that he spoke with a Western accent. She sat down and said that even if they rejected him, she had to fix things. The guy admitted again that he fell in love with her at first sight, with her incredible beauty. He asked to accept his friendship. Larry was even more surprised to think that such a recognition was relevant 15 years ago. Unexpectedly, Asher approached them and immediately aimed his sword at him. Which he could repel. Asher said that to tell her lover those things, he was apparently tired of living. The guy replied that he didn't want to die and asked Larry if she was his lover. Looking at Asher, he said he looked better, of course. Larry shouted that he was talking nonsense, which surprised both boys. Then she got very angry and activated her ability, ordering him to immediately take the sword away from her lover. Asher felt embarrassed, and the guy stood up, apologized, and said he didn't know she was really his lover. The boys put away their swords, and the stranger said he thought it was a lie, otherwise he wouldn't have confessed. He approached Asher and told him that whether it was true or not, a rejection is still a rejection. Larry called him a know-it-all with an alpaca mask. Then the guy apologized again and left, and Asher hugged Larry and asked her why she had let him go. Asher was already upset, thinking what would happen if she accepted his confession. But Larry interrupted him, saying that she simply didn't get lost easily. She thanked him for finding her, then Asher asked if she was waiting for him. And Larry replied that she already missed him. Larry hugged him and asked if his sudden disappearance surprised him, and added that something like that wouldn't happen again. While having a nice conversation, music started playing in the distance. And Larry said it seemed it was time to dance. But Asher reminded them that they had both lost their masks, and Larry replied that it would be a hassle. So it would probably be better to go home. However, Asher said everything was fine, and Larry, surprised, said this might attract unnecessary attention. But Asher still invited her to dance. Our couple came to the square. The party is different from a social dance, it seems much freer. And Larry took him to the dance floor and invited him to start dancing. Asher was so sweetly happy, thinking that he didn't expect this day to come. No smell of rotting corpses. No looks from people where disgust and fear mixed. No feeling of being superfluous, because he was different from other people. Asher thought that it was the Arietta who gave him a new life, gave him the opportunity to live as an individual. She gave him the opportunity to live as a normal person and not as a monster. He couldn't even dream that even a monster like him could dance in front of everyone. Despite such inept dancing, she looks at him with love. Of course, he fell in love with her. Larry said she loved him, and Asher also said he loved her. And at that moment, beautiful fireworks burst out. Asher tried to kiss Larry again, but she stopped him with her hand, and then he kissed her. Larry was shy and shouted what he was doing. Larry thought his lips were very soft, and Asher asked her what she didn't like. But Larry explained that this was the case, and then Asher asked if he could kiss her on the lips now. She realized she was yielding too much to him and decided to tease him by asking if he wanted to sleep with her. Remember story 15 or more. Larry explained that only kissing is a shame, and as punishment, no kissing for a while. The next day, as Asher was preparing to leave, she asked him if he wouldn't do that today. And Larry sweetly asked him what he was talking about. Usually, Larry would throw herself at him for kisses and call him handsome. Asher wanted to say exactly that, but couldn't say it. However, gathering courage, Asher asked her if she was going to kiss him and call him handsome. Larry calmly replied that she wouldn't do this today, and reminded him that she had said she punished him last night. Asher couldn't believe it and asked if she was serious. And upon receiving a positive response, Asher said that from now on he wouldn't kiss her in the street. But Larry said she would follow his words. Asher then approached Larry and asked if she really wasn't going to kiss him. But he immediately received the ban on seduction due to beauty, which also applies. And now when Asher realized he really wouldn't get a kiss, he started working sadly. It is very funny and pleasant to watch Asher beg Larry for a kiss. A few hours later, Larry returned to the forest to train, and Doha said she seemed happy. Larry happily said she just had a great date with Asher, thanks to Doha's recommendation. He who wanted to go there with Larry was not very happy. Doha suggested starting training, but Larry remembered seeing a strange man at the festival yesterday. She said a man from the West unexpectedly confessed to her. Indeed, it was a strange man. He confessed his love to her, Larry clarified. Larry was a little embarrassed and decided to show off, and sweetly said that it was probably all due to her supernatural beauty. Doha wondered why it bothered him so much that some rogue dared to confess to Larry. And yet, after an awkward silence, they decided to start the lesson. Doha jokingly asked if she planned to turn the place into ruins. Doha suggested finishing with the basics of magic and moving on to practice. Larry happily asked what they would do, and Doha replied they would learn the simplest things first. He surprised Larry by saying that she would try to kill him, raising his hand and saying that if she used magic at this point, she would probably kill the person instantly. Larry didn't like it at all and asked him what he was talking about, but Doha ignored the question and asked to kill him. When Larry said it wasn't a funny joke, Doha replied that it wasn't a joke at all. Then Larry pushed him, angry because he was so casual about her life. Larry was sad because she wanted to live so much, even though she had so little time left. Only now she felt like living. She was jealous and unhappy. Then Doha asked her what she wanted, and Larry replied that she wanted to move around quietly without an escort. To be able to go to different places. Doha remembered his childhood, said that the street would not be kind to her, and that if she left the capital now, she would definitely become a target. Doha, a target for those who want to profit, told her that if she didn't go to the enemy with the determination to kill, she herself would die. Larry thought she wanted to take the trip before she died because she only had 3 months left. And she didn't want to be killed before that. She would also like to learn how to defend herself so that her family cannot kidnap her again. The trip will take place right before her death, so she cannot tell anyone before leaving. Larry knew that the street would not be kind to her, and that she would be forced to hurt someone while defending herself. Doha noticed how distressed Larry was, and thought that he himself could protect her while she was with him. But he cannot stand the thought that while she is out of his sight, she might be in danger. So he expressed himself quite harshly. Doha thought she was a good girl and understood everything perfectly. Then he took her hand again and told her to attack him with the aim of killing him. He reassured her by telling her that he is not as defenseless as she thinks. Especially if she gets hurt, she can heal him. When Larry said she would still hurt him, Doha felt that feeling again every time she makes that face. A strange and sharp feeling appears inside him. Doha took out a fan and said they didn't have time for meaningless conversations. Doha told her to try to attack him, but Larry couldn't block any of the blows. Larry got angry and started remembering a spell that would not harm Doha and attacked him with water. But Doha successfully blocked her attack with his magic, and Doha said he preferred to wash with warm water. So she tried it. At night she returned to the mansion, incredibly tired. Halstein greeted her and Larry asked where Asher was. The butler said that the master was in the bathroom, and suggested they go there and inform him that she had arrived. Larry thought she could start cleaning the lower part of his body today, and realized that she would also need to touch the bare skin there. So Larry ran to Asher thinking that as long as Asher was in a robe, he needed to start cleaning him quickly. And the unsuspecting Asher came out of the bathroom, wondering how long he should wait to get a kiss, and almost had a heart attack from fright when Larry shouted his name. Larry pushed Asher onto the bed and climbed on top of him, telling him they could start cleaning the lower part of his body. She decided to start on her knees, but Asher quickly moved away and said they could do it another time. However, Larry replied that this is a mandatory process, so she asks that it be taken with the same seriousness. There was quite a strong curse on my knees, although magic is easier thanks to Doha's lessons. In the end, Larry managed to remove the curse from his knees, but Asher didn't seem to mind at all at that moment. Asher pulled her towards him. Larry reminded him that kisses were closed, but Asher kissed Larry anyway. Then he laid her on the bed and, climbing on top of her, kissed her again. Then he said that she said that kisses were allowed if he intended to sleep with her. He kissed her cheek again and asked if he could continue, and Larry was already thinking about accepting. Then she hugged him, letting Asher know that she was ready for their first night together. Then he took off his robe, looked at Larry and told her she was incredibly beautiful. He thought to himself that with a body like that, Larry must be disgusting to do this with him. And he already regretted not waiting, not waiting for a complete cleaning. But Larry stood up and said that he was also charming. She said that an ugly place on his body simply does not exist. Asher thought that when she said that. It seemed to him that everything was like that. Asher again declared his love for Larry in his thoughts, calling her his savior. Her everything. Morning came, and now it was Larry who was no longer there, exhausted after the previous night. Confused, Asher said he realized it was barely morning and asked if they could do it again. At first, Larry decided to refuse him, but seeing his beautiful face, which was already turning red, she accepted, but on the condition that they would do it alone, just once. In the afternoon, Larry arrived at Count Hossmann's mansion. Princess Elizabeth came to greet her personally. Larry bowed and thanked her for inviting her to the tea party. Alyssa reminded Larry that she had asked her to call her by her name, and Larry then thanked her and called the princess Alyssa. They walked towards the garden, and Alyssa said that they usually meet here with their close friends, and that she would like to introduce Larry to them. Alyssa assured her that they were all good people, but Larry was a little worried, and said she hoped she would please them. They approached the gazebo, and the princess introduced Madame Sherbet Genevieve, whom we already knew, to the luxurious Juana Hossmann, the eldest daughter of Count Hossmann, and to Sherilla Merchant. It was the latter who asked Larry a tactless question, since she had no surname. That meant she was a commoner, and how she could have met the princess, but the girls told her to be careful what she said. Because her question was rude, then Shiria apologized to Larry. The rest of the tea party went cheerfully and calmly, and afterwards Juana whispered to Larry that, although she was ashamed to talk behind their backs, Sherilla Merchant has only been with them for a few weeks. Alyssa took pity on her, since she had a failed debut and brought her here. And it's best to keep your distance from her for now. She is still quite ignorant, but then she showed respect by saying that the final decision is hers. She was just warning her that she would regret it if those puns continued in the future. And suddenly Larry was called. It was a happy-go-lucky who, like a puppy, cheerfully greeted his beloved who came to pick her up because he missed her. Everyone was surprised, to say the least, to see Duke Candle, but suddenly his facial expression changed. And he greeted the rest of the ladies. Asher said he would take her home, and Larry said goodbye to her new friends before getting into the carriage. In karate, Asher said he needed to go to the Emperor again, and sadly, he said he would like to spend time with her. Larry replied that she had plans anyway, so it wouldn't have worked out anyway. Seeing his sweet reaction, Larry was touched and she pulled him towards her to kiss him. Asher stopped and said he hadn't thought of that until now, but the carriage didn't seem like such a bad place. But Larry asked what he meant. Then Asher said it meant she kissed him without the intention of going further, and decided that she also needed to be punished. Larry didn't seem to mind either, and continued convincing him that the carriage was indeed a good place. But the coachman shouted that they were already there, and Larry quickly ran out of the carriage, saying that they arrived very quickly, leaving only Asher, who continued to laugh at her reaction. Larry looked at Asher confused and a little annoyed, telling him that then he would have to move to another room. Afterwards, Larry found Doha among the crowd and said that he was dressed differently, and Doha asked her if that outfit suited her. Larry had already imagined a picture of herself, thinking that the face alone was a work of art. And Doha said they were here to train, but Larry of course didn't listen to him. However, she recovered, and when she heard they would learn to keep the secret, she was very happy. And she started calling Doha the best, and that she loved him. Of course, she said this as a joke, and Doha understood it. He tried to calm down, and told her to try to hide in the crowd so that no one would notice her. After explaining the rules of the spell, Larry took his hand, and on the first try managed to become half invisible. A few hours ago, the real reason why Doha disguised himself, as Doha is shown to us. The shadows attacked him, and Doha said he was in a good mood, and that they really needed to ruin it. Of course, Doha easily defeated these shadows. With one blow, he killed everything at once, and of course was stained with blood. In the pool of blood, Doha saw Larry's reflection, and thought that she was one of those people who couldn't even attack properly for fear of being killed. And if he saw her like this now, he would probably hate her. He couldn't believe he was willing to go to such trouble for the sake of a girl. In fact, the strangeness began from the first day he met Larry, and he wondered if he was becoming strange due to his strong interest in her. Doha hated the feeling of love, so he couldn't believe he could succumb to it. But Larry brought him back to the present, showing how good she was at the stealth skill. Doha realized that he just wanted to possess Larry, but he was afraid and wondered how she would react if she knew his true nature. High priest of the temple and next pope, he wondered if she would be interested in his high status, knowing that his power was comparable to that of the emperor. Or will she dislike his past even though he grew up without love? He was raised as the daughter of a duke. And if she finds out that the priest she liked turned out to be a guy who was a beggar on the street? She would be angry at his deception. It was the second time that day Doha felt this way. And it irritated him. He realized that they were being followed and told Larry that he needed to buy something, and that he would be gone for a while. Larry sweetly replied that everything was fine and that she could go while she practiced. Doha thought there was no need to worry about her. She is under the protection of an experienced knight. Doha refers to Gerard, who is protecting her. He deliberately entered a dark alley, and the bandit followed him, and then said there was a good sum on his head. Doha thought this guy was deliberately provoking him with his unpleasant trick. While the bandit was talking about how he would get rich from his death, Doha was thinking about how he could kill him so as not to get dirty. But before doing anything, Larry ran towards them, who was so afraid that Doha would die that she attacked the bandit and killed him. Although she didn't really want to kill people, she did it to save her friend, and the first thing she did was run to Doha and ask if he was okay. A girl raised in nobility from childhood, who was afraid to harm anyone with magic. Despite this, she killed a man for him. Doha thought. Her hands were trembling, but she was still worried about Doha. That's all. Doha admitted to himself that he was still falling in love with Larry, and Larry continued to reassure him. Doha hugged Larry and wondered if he was really in love with Larry, but convinced himself not to by saying that his feelings were delusional. Just an invention. He convinced himself that he was making it all up. Suddenly, he heard a voice repeating that he loved him. The dark figure of a woman appeared behind Doha like a curse, telling him that he was her precious treasure. Doha told himself that this love is so disgusting. Then he started treating Larry, thanking her for saving him. Then he took her aside and told her that for today it was enough, and that he would accompany her to the carriage. Doha worried when he saw how worried Larry was. Once in the carriage, Doha told her that the guy was a murderer who had come to save his life. And he lied, saying that the bandit had come to look for him because there was a mine near his house. Sudden wealth can lead to disaster, so he has absolutely no need to worry about it. Larry thought Doha was a very gentle and kind person, and it must be difficult for him now. Doha continued saying that the mercenary wanted to kill him and that she was the savior. So, Larry thanked him and asked him to be careful, and Doha thought that she really wanted to express everything in her soul at that moment. About how her heart reacts to the slightest touch, but he remained silent and only wished her a good trip. Upon arriving home, Larry saw that Asher was already waiting for her and said she was very happy to see him as soon as she got home. Larry thought she couldn't bother him. He was busy these days, but Asher immediately noticed that something was wrong and asked her what was bothering her. She was surprised that he was able to understand her condition so quickly. But Larry still lied to him, telling him that nothing had happened. Then she dragged him to her house. Under the pretext of eating, Asher looked at Gerard, who showed with a sign that something had really happened to her. And Asher got angry, but thought that if she didn't want to talk, then let it remain a secret. But Asher was not going to stand idly by when they entered the mansion. A cake prepared by the butler and maids awaited them. They congratulated them because their relationship had lasted 50 days. Although Larry was delighted with the gift and thanked them, she was afraid that 50 days had already passed since their contact, which meant that about a month was left. She remembered that the doctor told her that she might feel like her heart was going to jump out of her chest. and that it could get worse soon, and she would simply explode. Larry didn't want to die in front of him. She couldn't show Asher how her body exploded. Meanwhile, Asher whispered to her that it was strawberry cake and asked her if she liked it while smiling sweetly. Larry thought she should leave before it was too late. Then Larry told him that it was her favorite cake. At night, Larry remembered all the sweet moments with Asher and thought that Asher's curse would soon be completely removed. And it seemed that her mental state had also improved. As time runs out, she will have to abandon many of the plans she wanted to implement with Ash. Larry was scared, but told herself that everything was fine and that she just needed to be patient. And everything would be fine again. And at the tea party, Madame Sherbet brought gifts for everyone. Larry was impressed that she had chosen a color combination for everyone. For each of them, Larry noticed that Sherry was not happy and asked her what was wrong, and Sherry started complaining that she preferred pink. Pink also goes well with her eyes. Sharia hinted to Larry to give her her gift. Larry, of course, understood everything and remembered how stupid Ron constantly took all her things. And anyway, she showed nobility and said that if he wanted it that way, then they could trade. And the girls called Sharia with disgust. Larry said it was okay, but Madame Sherbet was the one who carefully chose every ribbon. So everything depended on her decision. And Madame replied uncertainly that if Larry didn't mind, then both she and the stupid Sherilla, like a child, rejoiced at her profitable exchange. Madame Sherbet and the princess were worried, and Genevieve asked her if she really didn't mind. And the princess said she had no reason to please her at all. However, Sherilla didn't even think of stopping, and again asked a tactless question about her relationship with Duke Candle. Larry decided to say that at first they were connected by a contractual relationship. But she realized that it was not worth saying such a thing. Therefore, she simply nodded. Then Madame Sherbet said that it was the first time she had seen him bring a girl into the drawing room. And the princess said it was the first time she had seen the Duke smile. And Sherilla said it was the first time she had seen such a handsome man, and asked why there were so many rumors about him. All three girls thought that although he was handsome, he always smelled like rotten meat. And Juana told Sherilla that handsome or not, he already had a lover, a beautiful girl. And Sherilla crossed the line again and asked if they were going to get married. And Larry replied that she didn't want to answer that question. Then Sherry smiled with disgust and said she understood everything. Larry noticed her duplicity. Asher was training at that time and asked Gerard if he had been neglecting his training all this time. Gerard thought that today was clearly not his day and asked him what he did wrong. Escher said that Doha Arkiel, being the son of a merchant, had been immersed in religion since childhood. Gerard thought that he was in such a mood because of yesterday's incident, when the lady killed a man while saving the priest. He ordered to search for all information about this priest. It's strange that no one knows that he is the next pope. Asher said that his case was too perfect, as if it had been specially prepared. Gerard replied that he would continue searching for information about him and also wanted to talk about the previous meeting. Gerard wanted to know if he had made a decision. He talked about the dispute between the dukes, who said that the relations between the Harshan Empire and the Danube Kingdom were not improving in any way. Everyone said they needed to prepare for war and were tired of using all means. As expected, everyone decided that Duke Candle should go to the front. They believed that the other dukes were too old to go to the very center of the wars. However, Asher decided that he wouldn't go anywhere before. He would have accepted without a doubt, but now he doesn't want to leave Larry. He said they couldn't force him to leave and asked what about the recruits at night. Gerard replied that there was nothing to worry about. Melosa offered to train them. She said that the master always supported them, that's why they follow him. So the rookies will definitely feel them and do the same. But there are a couple of people. Gerard didn't finish speaking as Larry came out. She was worried because she couldn't communicate with Doha. She tried to contact the temple, but received no response. She approached Asher and told him that she was exhausted from training, and Larry said she would help him wash. But then she started teasing him, asking him if maybe they should take a shower together. Asher hugged Larry and told her that then they would go to the bathroom immediately. Asher remembered that she suggested they bathe together. Larry laughed and said it was just a joke and that she would wash him. Before she couldn't even hold his hand out of shyness, Larry thought. Asher said that if she was going to wash him, she had to do it properly, and that meant washing him thoroughly with soap. He took her hand and led her to the bathroom, whispering to her if it would be better to bathe together. Larry was angry because this scoundrel was deliberately teasing her. Then she said that maybe she should wash him today. And when Asher was distracted, Larry took a container of water and poured it over his head. Then Asher asked her to come closer, but she simply moved away and Asher decided to get up and approach her. Larry started running away, and Asher warned her not to run because it was dangerous. But Larry replied that it seemed much more dangerous at the moment. Asher caught Larry, lifted her up and told her that now it was her turn, but he didn't take her to the bathtub but to the bed. In the morning, Larry was already exhausted, and Asher left for the Imperial Castle. A terrible beast, but he said it wasn't him who started but her. Butler Hallstein came and said that the temple still hadn't contacted them today. She was worried about Doha, and when Hallstein asked her if she had plans for today. And Larry replied that she had to go to the center today. Little by little, she had to prepare to leave. Larry dressed comfortably and walked through the city. She thought she needed to buy comfortable clothes, a bag and books. Doha gives her enough money after every treatment so that she doesn't have to worry about money. It's the best feeling. And if someone tries to attack her this time, she will now be able to defend herself. It wasn't for nothing that she studied magic. All this time, Jard continued following Larry, hiding on the roofs. Hitting pickpockets, etc. Larry was shopping, so it was difficult for her to drag the bag. Suddenly, in the crowd, Larry noticed her friend, Princess Alyssa. She was very happy to see her friend here. But then, two fools started joking about the princess's growth. And she definitely didn't have a serious relationship, because nobody would want a girl like that. And Larry decided to teach these boys a lesson. She approached them and told them that her friend was in the alley, and that she would like to talk to them. Finally, they fell into the trap, and they already started fighting over her, but of course, when they entered the alley, there was no one there. And when they complained that there was no one here, Larry replied that it was justice that called them here. And she threw a bunch of objects at them, using her magic. It turns out the princess was nearby the whole time and watched the whole performance. Larry was embarrassed and asked at what point she had been watching, and Alyssa replied that she was surprised when she claimed that her friend was Justice. So she saw everything, Larry thought, and Alyssa told her that she was quite skilled in the use of magic, and asked if she would like to work for her in the future. Larry thought she didn't have much of a future anyway due to her illness, and then Elizabeth hugged her tightly and told her they could talk about that later. And then she dragged her away, telling her that now she would buy something tasty because it was the right time. At that moment, Doha and Joshua were on the same street, and they noticed how Larry was walking with a boy. That's what Joshua said. They decided that Alyssa was a boy. Doha wanted to kill him, erase him from the face of the earth, but he only wanted to continue using this girl. He only needed her by his side, and Doha kept convincing himself that he was not in love with anyone. In the temple, we see how that gloomy man told Doha that there wasn't a moment when he wouldn't regret bringing him to this temple. Doha replied that good, because he was of quite humble origin, and then the man asked what was wrong with him. Dad's health is deteriorating, so it poses an immediate threat to him. Although he has more authority and connections than Doha, his skills are superior to anyone else's. Since he is the second candidate for Pope, he certainly wants Doha to die. The man said he had recently heard that he had been cleaning the outside of the temple, as if he were hiding something interesting outside. Doha worried. He thought he should never know her charm, her preciousness. He couldn't allow that disgusting bastard to hurt Larry, Doha worried. That's why I decided to simply mock the old man, saying that he has a rather developed imagination. They say that with age, you look more and more like a child. Doha approached him and whispered that this was the last warning, and that it would be better not to provoke him anymore. After all, he doesn't know what to do in a fit of anger. And suddenly, the old man told Doha that he is no different from his mother. He started an affair and acts like a fool. This greatly affected our Doha, who had a difficult relationship with his mother. He grabbed the old man and was about to hit him. Doha remembered how he walked with his mother, how she fed him and said she loved him very much, and that she couldn't live without him. Joshua took his hand and shouted that he had forgotten that he had an important meeting scheduled. Doha looked very angry. He didn't know exactly what happened, but decided that he first needed to calm him down so that there would be no unpleasant consequences. So, Joshua said that he received a letter from the Candle Duchy. They asked him to come. He ignored them, as he said, but Joshua offered to reply to this letter. For a minute, Doha was happy remembering Larry, but then he remembered how that old man asked about his beloved. Then he will definitely use Larry as his weak point. This should never happen, and if he misses something because of his stupid feelings, it would be a mistake to meet Larry again, because he loves Larry, so Doha told him not to contact them again. He wanted to go for a walk and ordered the carriage to be prepared. Seeing how Larry was smiling with what she thought was a boy, he repeated that this feeling was just an illusion. But he couldn't help it and ordered Joshua to send a letter to the Candle Duchy, and that he would visit them tomorrow. Returning to Larry, Princess Alyssa admitted that she really liked her and that, if it weren't for her brother, she could have met her sooner. And then she said that lately there have been unpleasant rumors about him. They say he suffers from a terrible illness. And he hasn't left the mansion. There are rumors that his appearance was terribly disfigured, and that he was disabled as a result of an accident. They also said that he suffers from a Manhwa-associated illness. They say the Duke and Duchess cannot find a place because of this. She said he has the hard rock disease. Larry thought that he had the same incurable disease as hers, which meant that the disease was hereditary. Elizabeth said she thought she should tell him because it concerned his family. But she still looked surprised and apologized. Larry became worried and felt a bit nauseous if she had spoken about her illness. Maybe they would have treated her differently. That's why she was upset and sad, although she had nothing to fear, because her future was already predetermined. Alyssa took Larry's hand and asked if she was okay. Her test was not healthy. But Larry lied again and said that, of course, everything was fine for her. And she even felt relieved. Larry thought she didn't want anyone to know about her terrible death, so she needed to die alone in a place where no one would be. The next day, Doha came to see Larry and ran to him and asked if he understood how worried she was about not being able to contact him. Doha was surprised, and Larry asked him if he was busy looking for the mercenary client, and if he had other wounds. However, Larry asked him to contact her more often because they should keep in touch. Doha randomly asked out loud what kind of connection she meant, and Larry replied, "A connection like between close friends." Then he took her hand in his and started the treatment. Larry thought that thanks to Doha, she felt much better. She would like to die without pain. And Doha was already embarrassed. He was just holding her hand, and his heart was jumping out of his chest. He thought she shouldn't feel the beating of his heart with the touch of his hands. And if she understands everything, she will probably avoid him. Doha, he really started to worry about such nonsense. Suddenly, Halstein menacingly looked at Doha and told Larry that he had received a letter. Doha was also not happy with the butler's appearance. Larry was pleasantly surprised when she read that the letter was from Alyssa to her beloved companion. She felt awkward seeing Doha's reaction, so she said that they were only acquaintances of this person before. But now they have become friends. The First Lady, whom she befriended, said that she had many common interests. So now they are good friends. Doha was clearly jealous, so he approached her and took strands of her hair, telling her that when they were alone, she should let him concentrate on him. She thought Doha felt slighted, and Doha moved away and apologized for overstepping his bounds. But Larry said she understood that it could be controversial. And they went into the room to start the lesson. Outside the window, Doha saw a knight serving Duke Candle. He used the stealth skill. And at that moment, everyone was shouting and arguing at the meeting. Larry's father was shouting that Duke Candle definitely needed to participate in the war. The Duke said that no matter how many losses there were, they had to fight. Apparently, they themselves had never participated in a war. They said they couldn't ignore the preparation of the Danube Kingdom's soldiers, but that their people would not be enough with only the participation of Duke Candle. Asher remembered the cries of pain, the pleas for help, how everyone was shouting and running in agony. Remembering all the deaths, Asher sadly thought that he didn't want to go to war again. You can't just live with the person you love. Why can't everyone just leave him alone? Asher thought. Suddenly, his thoughts changed when Sherry shouted his name again and said they had met again. Asher got angry because she happened to dare to say his name, because only one person can do that. But she was Larry's friend, Asher thought, and so he calmly told her that he hadn't given her permission to call him by his name. Sherry already started complaining because she had just heard Larry call him that, so she repeated after her. And put on the mask again, asking him if he remembered her name. Of course, Asher didn't remember her name and simply remembered her as friend number 3. He tried to look kind, said her name, and asked her to simply call him Shiria. Of course, Asher didn't want to know, but since she is Larry's girlfriend, we must take it into account. She didn't stop and continued chatting. Asher was already depressed and thought how long he would have to endure and listen to her. Shiria said that she and Larry had become very close lately and had decided to meet again next time. Asher thought that if Larry had more girlfriends, she would surely communicate less with that priest. He said he didn't know what other nobles thought about it, but he didn't think it was right to make friends with people based on their status. And yet he naively assumed that Larry was a commoner. But Asher thought that she was probably talking about the difference between the princess and the other ladies. He decided that she was praising Larry, not herself. Asher smiled when he thought of Larry and that he wanted to see her. It was very hard for him all day without her. Seeing Asher smile, Shiria naively assumed that he smiled because he likes cute girls like her. She believed that she was a saint because she treats commoners very well. The way she is kind to Larry is a confirmation of her incomparable. What a fool. And Shiria tried to look kind again and suggested that next time they have dinner together, because it would be good to know each other better. But of course, Asher ignored her flirting attempts and calmly replied that he would accept only if Larry didn't mind, and then quickly escaped from her, dreaming of returning home as soon as possible and seeing Larry to be able to kiss her. And Sherilla continued living in her fantasies, asking how long the Duke's relationship with the commoner would last. She told herself that she should be careful not to fall in love with him prematurely. But she thinks it's already too late. And at home, Larry continued practicing her stealth skill and had already improved it quite well. She happily said that at this rate, she could become the best at this skill. And when she entered her room, she saw a guy who was also hiding. Larry immediately asked what he was doing here, especially in her room. And the guy started lying, saying he was a new member of Duke Candela's squad. The guy continued lying by saying that he was simply lost because he had recently been to the estate. And Larry thought she was seeing this guy for the first time. However, Larry decided to play along and asked why he was using the stealth skill at that moment. And the guy replied that the Duke's shadow squad always acts in secret, even inside the mansion. Before leaving, he said that although he was still a beginner, he could boast that his skills were quite good. And he pointed out that hers were good too. He apologized again for his rudeness, said this would not happen again, and quickly ran away. Larry also said goodbye to him, but then approached Hallstein and told him that there seemed to be a rat in her house, that she was no longer such an overly naive fool. When Asher found out all the details of the incident, he immediately ran to Larry and hugged her and apologized for making a mistake, although he knew that the Duchy of Candle had many enemies and that she could be in danger at any moment. He let his guard down too much. Asher was really worried, so much so that he was even trembling. He continued to apologize for putting her in danger. Larry told him it was okay, but Asher was still worried and kept apologizing. His worries were pleasant for Larry. She told him it was okay, so he shouldn't worry anymore and blame himself. Then she kissed him. Then she quickly got out of his arms and said that now she would go to bed because she had a date for tomorrow. After Larry left, Asher returned to his staff and told Melissa that he had handed over the novice training to her. Melissa replied that she had no forgiveness and accepted any punishment. Asher asked her what she thought she would receive if Larry got hurt. And then Melissa apologized to Asher again. The offense was quite serious, and she thought that Asher had the right to punish them for their ignorance. Then Asher turned to Gerard and asked if he had found anything about the attacker's hideout. Gerard said that he hid, and it seems that the other recruits associated with him left earlier. They still don't know the purpose of infiltrating the estate. But it is definitely clear that it was a secret entry, because all his personal information turned out to be false. So Asher told them that he was giving them a week to search. After that, a tense atmosphere reigned on the estate. She barely hid her notebook and her things for the trip. Asher didn't leave Larry's side for several weeks, and this is literally hugging her, and asked her not to leave. Let's return to the present, where Sherilla asked to find a moment to meet with Asher. In this way, they can strengthen their friendship. Them and Juana tried to stop Shiria, but she ignored his comment and continued asking Larry. The princess told Shiria to refrain from making unreasonable demands. And when her fake tenderness didn't work, she showed her true self and shouted why she couldn't have lunch with her friend. Larry replied that it was not difficult for her at all, and that Shiria was already ready to celebrate her victory. But then our strong Larry told her that she simply didn't want to do this. Sherry Ann was not happy and asked her why she was rejecting her, and Larry happily replied that her Asher can be very shy. The little hypocrite didn't like this. She was angry and thought how dare this commoner repay her kindness in that way. And that with such a low status as hers, she shouldn't even be sitting at this table. She thought that he only treated her kindly because His Highness brought her here, and Sharia couldn't believe that she now dared to make excuses for Escher. Sharia was angry because such an insignificant commoner was with such an ideal man. She didn't know two things about Escher's curse, from which she herself would have run away. And that Larry is the only daughter of a duke, and therefore a princess. In her thoughts, she insulted Larry more than once, and said that there was no way she would marry such a commoner. Then she looked at Elizabeth, hoping to say something to this commoner. Larry thought her thoughts were too obvious, so she stood up and said she wasn't feeling well, and that she would leave first. She apologized for ruining the atmosphere of the tea party, and said they would see each other next time. And Alyssa ran after her. Shiria naively assumed that the princess ran to scold Larry and called her Bella. She continued smiling with disgust and said that the Arietta was not so rude as to get so angry with her. Absurd. And Larry had already reached the door, thinking that she knew this would happen, that Shiria would fall in love with Asher at first sight. She had made concessions to them until now. She had done everything they asked, even when they made ridiculous demands of her. She had behaved maturely and satisfied them. So why did they keep asking for more and more greedily? Why did they keep doing this, even though she practically had nothing left? Larry was angry because these greedy people wanted to take away the only thing Larry had left. This is the first time she has had friends, so she doesn't know how to behave in such situations. She already blames herself for greedily wanting to make friends before her death. Larry thought she had become too greedy because she was about to die. And then the princess, who was already out of breath, ran towards her. Alyssa quickly approached her and apologized, saying that Sherilla behaved rudely, and that she couldn't help it, and for all the inconvenience caused, she wanted to apologize. She apologized again, saying she was very sorry. Larry began to worry and asked her to lift her head. She is a princess, but she is always willing to apologize even for others. Alyssa said that she was the one who brought Shiria, because she couldn't leave her alone when she couldn't fit into secular society. Juana also found it difficult to fit into that environment due to her bad temper. Alyssa thought how she could be happy with them. Regardless of others' opinions, that would also help Sherry. She didn't realize that if people were different, the results would be different. She promised that she would definitely talk privately with Sherry. The princess said it hurts her heart when she sees her close friend suffer, so if this happens again, she would like her to honestly say how she feels. Larry hugged her friend, thanked her for coming to pick her up personally. She told her she wasn't suffering, so she didn't have to worry. They wished her to be careful on the way back, and the princess told Larry that she had no reason to worry. For some reason, Doha was here, who was again jealous because he thought she was with this boy again. Doha thought that if he had met Larry before this guy or Duke Candle, he would have had a chance. He thought he was simply crazy. He came ahead of the appointed time because he wanted to meet her. Thanks to her, his mood goes up and down dozens of times a day, and he doesn't know what he really wants from her. He passed by the princess using the stealth skill, but she noticed him and said he had arrived early. Larry also managed to notice Doha and was very happy. Only now did Doha realize that it wasn't a boy, but a princess. Doha turned to Larry and told her that not long ago, he recognized a high level of stealth, and that he was glad it was easier for him to distinguish her. And then Doha praised her for her skills, which had increased a lot. He thought that soon she would notice the Shadow Knight who was following her. And Larry said that her friend recently recommended a good place with delicious desserts. He remembered that Doha liked sweets and said they could go there. Doha thought he no longer wanted to run away from his feelings. No matter how much he denies his feelings, in the end he only finds his place next to her. And at night, Larry went to Asher's room and said that this time would be the last. And that finally the cleaning would end. The curse that had tormented him his whole life seemed like something he would never get rid of. From this horror that chased him his whole life. From the loneliness that was by his side all this time. Now Asher can only be happy, now that he will finally get rid of the curse. Asher thought that Larry had changed his whole life, or rather gave him a new one. And then he pulled her towards him and kissed her. After they arrived, Larry was exhausted and Asher was worried about her. Larry ordered him to come with her. Asher lifted Larry, and she told him that she had told him more than once that seduction during cleaning was forbidden. And Asher added that then kisses would be forbidden. Larry replied that he should be careful in the future because she is a terrible woman. It was morning already and Larry asked, since he was already fully authorized, how about they go on a trip together? It could be on the river or in the mine, any place will do. The main thing is that they go together. Asher thought he had never thought of this before. Traveling with Larry, he liked the idea very much and said he was glad Larry suggested it. Asher said that within the territory of the duchy, there is a place near the sea and hot spring water. Larry was delighted and said it was almost summer, so they should go there as soon as possible. Poor Gerard couldn't find anything this week. He thought that if he didn't find anything, he would be fired from his job. And he would be severely punished. But then Melissa said she had found something. Gerard even wanted to kiss her to celebrate. He left the documents on the table, and if you don't ask for them with special gloves, the magic will dissipate. It is clear that someone had already touched the document and intentionally copied it. He knew this document and came here on purpose to get it. Since these documents can really put an end to everything, this is a document about trade with the Danube Kingdom. Duke Ellington definitely did this. He wants to force him to participate in this war. Considering that they left no trace, it is likely that the magicians of the Blanchett family were involved. Asher got angry and hit the table. Then he asked Melissa what she thought they would do with the document. She suggested that at the next meeting, the dukes would use these documents as proof of his connection with the Danube Kingdom, for which he could be accused of treason. And as proof of his innocence, he will have to take part in the war. Maybe everything would be different if he had the support of the nobles on his side. Escher was angry. He didn't want to live. That's why he didn't see the point in communicating with the nobles and participating in political life. This was his mistake. He thought that it was possible even if he went to war, and if he could do it at the right time. He will be able to go on a trip with Larry, and Larry will wait for him until now. Escher remembered how Larry ran to him. He was sure that, as always, Larry would greet him. And now we are shown how Larry lived her lesson. She said she thought she could do better, but felt something strange. Doha said he would help her, but he himself tries so hard so that she doesn't realize how embarrassed he is. He took her hand and showed her how to use her skill correctly. Do-ha told himself that it wasn't him Larry loved, but he didn't want to leave her. And in the future, when he was left alone, he would reflect on his feelings. Larry thanked him and then showed him how she uses her skills. Do-ha asked her where she was going on a trip. Because she said she was going alone, then he sat on the floor. Larry didn't remember telling him her plans, but decided it didn't matter, because it would still happen after breaking up with Asher. She also sat next to him and told him that she really hadn't told him anything. Do-ha asked her why she was traveling alone. Do-ha thought that even if the Duke was busy, he would certainly have time for Larry, although traveling alone was quite dangerous. Therefore, Do-ha asked if perhaps she had some circumstances that were difficult to talk about. He decided to tease her by asking if she really wanted to leave after breaking up with the Duke. Do-ha thought it was a stupid question because the two of them were inseparable. But after asking Larry, she smiled back silently, and he realized that she was really going to break up with him. Larry thought Do-ha was her benefactor, her friend. He was the one who constantly treated her, helped her a lot in her personal life. Do-ha also agreed to teach her. He is her true friend, Larry thought, so she decided to share with him. She revealed that she has a contractual relationship with Asher, a relationship that contractually is only for 3 months. Do-ha was very surprised when he heard that they signed the contract without feelings of love. And Larry said that, when they met, she was the one who suggested a contractual relationship. Larry continued telling him the details, and Do-ha thought he couldn't understand it, because the Duke didn't seem like a man who would agree to a contractual relationship. Since Larry cleaned his curse, his feelings for her can hardly be called simple love. These feelings express something more. Larry asked him to keep it a secret. She didn't want strange rumors to start spreading. Do-ha thought that maybe in the distant future, his feelings locked deep inside himself would reach Larry. And at the Duke's estate, her father said he had read the report and couldn't believe she was still clinging to this candle Duke. The Duke says he has become too arrogant, and we are shown that strange guy who was in Larry's room. He thought that since she had renounced the family, they could not benefit from this marriage. Therefore, his strongest mage should not just go to the Duke. He deliberately cultivated naivety in her and did not allow her to develop, so that she couldn't betray him like that, the pathetic bastard. The Duke said that Rayon, even in his seizures, screams her name. He believed that she had broken his whole family, his brother, and now she wants to live happily ever after. He ordered that guy to return her or kill her. His puppy must not bite him on the neck. Meanwhile, Larry went to see her friend Genevieve, who was worried that she had lost a lot of weight. In fact, Larry was tired due to the intense training and didn't even have the strength to walk. But she said she was fine. Larry said she came here for the same brooch she bought before, because it was already broken. It turned out that Asher wore it every day. That's why it broke. He looked so sad. Genevieve said she had something suitable. She bought more in the hope that it would soon become popular. These jewels are made so that, instead of photographs, they can keep symbolic jewels in them. Madame Sherbet opened the locket, and Larry saw that the gem resembled the color of Escher's eyes. So Larry immediately said she would buy it. She received enough money from Do-ha, and Genevieve offered her a friendly discount. But Larry politely refused. Larry hoped that this locket would remind her of him from time to time, even after her death. She bought this medallion and left the boutique. And immediately they robbed Larry. She wondered if she really looked like an easy victim. Then Larry ran after him, but unfortunately she had little mana left. She couldn't help with magic. And it was hard to run. The thief ran into the alley, and Gerard came out, who had Larry's gift, handed it to Larry, and apologized for not being able to carry her bag, since his accomplice took it away. Larry thought there was a notebook in her bag. Fortunately, it did not contain any particularly important information. So Larry asked Gerard what he was doing here. She said it was the first time she saw him outside of work. Gerard lied by saying he had a day off, so he decided to go for a walk. But Larry is no longer so easy to deceive. She apologized for taking up his precious time. Then Larry got into the carriage and realized that he had been watching her the whole time. This must be Asher's order, Larry thought. She wondered for what purpose Asher assigned Gerard to her. If he really didn't trust her, if he feared that she would reveal the secrets of the Duchy of Candela to him. Does he believe she will spread the word about the curse, or maybe he was just keeping Larry safe? Larry decided that she couldn't be sure of anything until she asked Asher everything personally. Let's return to the meeting where they shouted at him that, even though he was in secret contact with the Danube Kingdom, he didn't want to participate in the war. This could be considered treason. And if he wants to prove his innocence, let him prove it in action. The vile old men framed Asher so that they themselves wouldn't go to war. The Duke said that this incident cannot be refuted with a few papers, not even so it is serious. And if he doesn't want to go to war, death awaits him. As you can imagine, Asher is incredibly angry. He found one of the traitors and asked him if Duchess Ellington had successfully received all the documents. Of course, it's useless to torment him, because he will go to war anyway. But he doesn't like that his own people lie to him. Asher said that since he was a member of his shadow squad, he was his man, and then asked what the thief got for betraying him. When Asher said he hoped it was something more valuable than his life, the guy used his stealth skill. And he ran away. But then the guy took the sword that was next to him and, calling him a monster, said he would kill him. Of course, their fight didn't last long. When the guy attacked him, Asher killed the traitor with one blow. Melissa asked why the lady was learning magic with a priest and said that she knew she was talented. But she didn't understand the ultimate goal. She didn't understand why she needed the stealth skill. But then she said that they would continue to protect her anyway. She wondered why she should hide. Asher replied that this question should not arise in her mind, and then Melissa apologized. When they left, Asher seemed to notice something, but then he just left, thinking that he was just imagining it. But Asher's instincts were correct. Larry was standing at the door, hiding under the stealth skill. Larry came here for no reason. She came here in secret because she didn't want to distract Asher from his matters. She remembered that Asher said he didn't like it when his own people lied to him. She thought that although she had never lied to him, and she often saw such things in Blanchett. And unfortunately, she even got used to them, the reason for her vigilance was, in fact, the escort. And if he had asked her about it, she would have honestly told him that all these were minor troubles. But she was still trembling with fear. She remembered that Melissa said they would continue to protect her anyway, and she wondered why she was hiding. Larry finally realized that they were going to follow her, even though her contract was ending in less than a month. She thought that if she asked and their relationship soured, she didn't want to delve deeper and decided to pretend she knew nothing about it. Larry decided that for the few weeks they had left, she wanted to leave things as they were. Suddenly, Escher asked her if she had heard that relations between the Empire and the Danube Kingdom had deteriorated a lot. Larry replied that she heard about this from Madame Sherbet due to the deteriorating relations. Trade routes were blocked and jewelry prices soared. While saying this, she understood everything, and Asher directly told her that he was forced to participate in this war. Larry dropped the knife from the table and angrily said that this scum was deliberately firing someone who had just started to rest normally. Asher was pleasantly surprised when Larry said that the Emperor himself was to blame for the deterioration of relations. And he asked why they were blaming innocent people. Asher laughed at this, and then Larry asked what was funny about it, and Asher apologized. Then he explained that it was the first time he had seen someone care so much about him, and added that it was quite pleasant. And Larry wondered when she would have to prepare, and that she wouldn't leave until she left. And if she got hurt, and if Asher didn't return at all. And she couldn't just not participate in the war, Larry thought, and Asher looked at her with love. Then he touched her face and said that this was a very insignificant war, and that it couldn't even compare to the wars he had already been through. Asher had been on the battlefield since he was very young, so he no longer had a reason to live. No one was waiting for him, there was no family to return to. The curse was eating away at his skin. And every day he lived surrounded by a sea of blood was simply terrible, so much so that he was willing to die there. He said that then he was simply surviving, and that now he has something to regret. Because now there is meaning in life. The reason for his regret, the meaning of his life itself, this is his Larry. Asher thought, for him, she was everything. Then he hugged Larry and told her that he would definitely come back to her, to his Larry. In the afternoon, Larry was at a tea party with friends and Sherry. The princess looked at Sherry meaningfully, and then Sherry apologized to Larry for the fact that last time her request was inappropriate. Larry casually replied that she forgives him, but thought that she was only asking for forgiveness for Alyssa. And her words were not absolutely sincere. Sherry was angry, thinking that it was only because Alyssa was on her side that this commoner was acting so arrogantly. Genevieve decided to calm the situation and asked if they were now thinking of investing in gold or jewelry since their value had increased. The girls continued to have a pleasant conversation among themselves, but only Shiria remained silent. Disgusted, she wondered if they couldn't see that she was angry. Shiria assumed that the girls were supposed to comfort her, but instead they continued talking. The butler approached Larry and told her that Duke Candle had arrived and told her that she could take her time, since he would be waiting for her. So Larry was about to say she was leaving, when suddenly Shiria abruptly stood up and said she would be gone for a minute. Her stupidity is even funny. Juana said that they understand that the problem with Lady Shiria must be solved. She said that her antics cannot be forgiven all the time. Alyssa thought that everyone knew what happens to an aristocrat who is expelled from a lady's circle. And Sharilla did not make big mistakes, she is very generous. That's why Alyssa said she would talk to Sharilla again and asked her to forgive her for this trick for the last time. And Alyssa invited Larry to take her to the carriage. And at that moment, Sharilla ran to Asher. Of course, Asher was not happy with her at all. Sharilla thought that this commoner rudely rejected her favor, so she had no intention of tolerating it anymore. And she told Asher that she missed him. Of course, Asher didn't understand this at all, and Sharilla thought that no one could resist her. Because she was so beautiful, the most beautiful flower in the empire. Sharilla thought that she had already sunk into the Duke's soul and asked if the Duke missed her too. Right. She said she wanted to see him again and even asked Larry about it. But she refused. The girl continued talking and said that Larry was probably just worried. And then Asher asked her what she was talking about. She started stroking his hand and said she was talking about the relationship between her. And Asher asked her if she hadn't thought about it. She is probably just jealous because she won't be able to be with Asher as she is a commoner. He won't be able to marry her. And of course, she doesn't even dare to think about a relationship with her friend's lover. But since he will break up anyway, the situation takes a different turn. Sherry already thought that if she wants to date him, she should break up with Larry. Asher in the end couldn't stand her nonsense and shaking off her hand, asked her what kind of nonsense she was talking about. And that there was no talk of any separation. And Larry is not a commoner. Asher asked her what she was thinking when she called the only ducal princess of the empire a commoner. Shiria just now realized that Larry was the Duke's daughter, and Asher said that even if she were a commoner, he would never leave her. He said they would be together for the rest of their lives if she wanted, so if she continues to talk nonsense, she should cut off her chattering tongue. Shiria now understood why they call him a monster and fell to the ground. Asher then remembered that he told her not to call him by his name, and Shiria called him a monster. But then the princess ran up to them and asked for Duke Escher's forgiveness on her behalf, and asked that she be let go this time. Sharilla didn't understand her because she was a princess, so she shouldn't humiliate herself like that in front of him. She didn't understand how noble Alyssa was. Escher accepted the princess's apology and told her to take her and lead her away from him. And when he turned around, he saw Larry, who had been watching them the whole time. Larry was really angry about Sherry's behavior, but when she heard Asher talk about a long-term relationship, she wondered if he himself had signed a contract for a 3-month relationship. She had mixed feelings. She thought that he agreed to this, that they would just have fun for these 3 months. and then they would part calmly and without regrets. That's why she behaved with such indifference. This is a complete misunderstanding. Now it seems that she was playing with Asher the whole time. He realized that she was too frivolous. He was worried that, when he told her that it had all been a big misunderstanding, Larry would wonder if he would treat her as harshly as he treated others. Everything Asher said about treason made Larry feel bad. She wondered if he would brandish his sword over her in the same way. Unable to bear it, she ran out. And Doha was in his office, wondering where the old man had got the idea about his mother. They couldn't cross paths. Doha continued researching for information about Jibril, but he couldn't find how it could be related to his mother. Or maybe they met before his elevation to service. Doha thought, although there was no such thing in the reports of his mother's movements. Doha used to follow his mother and received periodic reports, not because he loved her, but because he was interested in how well she recovered after selling him to the temple. But a few days ago, the reports about her stopped. Doha realized that to find out the connection of his mother with Ibril. However, he immediately dismissed this idea. He thought it was not necessary. He should not visit the person who sold him. Doha remembered the day his mother betrayed him. With what joy she embraced the bag of money along with her son. The little one kept screaming and begging his mother not to leave him. He promised he would obey her in everything. He screamed that he would raise her himself and earn a lot of money for her. The boy begged her not to leave him. But then he returned to reality and asked if she was okay. It was Larry. She asked him if anything hurt him. Doha replied that he was fine and asked Larry why she was using the stealth skill unaccompanied. Larry was silent for a while, then she asked Doha to help her, and then she explained the whole situation. And she asked him if she should tell him the truth, that she considered this relationship just a 3-month contract. Asher must know the truth, except that she has a terminal illness, Larry thought. Neither she nor Asher are in love, they just sympathize with each other. She spent a lot of time with him and still cannot understand something so simple. She decided to carefully end their relationship before feelings deepened. It didn't matter even if these 3 months had not yet passed. Then, Doha asked what she would do if the Duke wanted to continue this relationship. Larry replied that this could not be, because she would immediately go on a trip. Doha said that if the Duke thought he was betrayed, he would definitely not be happy. And Doha asked her to tell him if something happened, and he would definitely come to the rescue. Larry walked out and thought about how much her head hurt, and that she was walking too slowly. This is because she used the stealth skill for too long, which means it consumes more mana than she thought. Suddenly, that same crazy guy approached her, greeted her, and asked her to walk calmly with him. However, Larry was not yet completely exhausted, and that's why she was able to use her magic against him. But in reality, the situation was bad. Even if she was in good shape, it wouldn't mean she won. The strange guy said he didn't want to hurt the lady, and again, asked her to walk calmly with him. Larry thought that Doha was right now, is the right time to harm others to protect oneself. The abnormal continued talking about Larry's strength and confessed his love to her, while Larry, meanwhile, used elemental magic against him. And then she decided to flee because, as that weirdo said, she lacks battle experience. Larry noticed that there was no one on the street, as if this place had been specially prepared. She ran to the corner and hid behind the boxes while the guy kept following her. He said he didn't dare to harm his lover and that he still needed to take her to his family. Larry hid and hoped that when he left, she would immediately run to the temple. That was nearby. She wanted to ask for help, but suddenly the crazy guy managed to find Larry and told her that apparently they were destined to be together. Larry was caught again and handcuffed with an anti-magic effect. Larry wondered why they were doing this to her. She said she would live her life doing whatever she wanted before dying, so why not leave her alone? And then, that crazy guy approached her and asked if her lover was okay, and Larry asked him who had ordered her kidnapping. If Duke Blanche did this, the guy asked her if she called him father, but he agreed that he was not the best father. The guy said that the poor lady incredibly grew up so capable in that terrible place. Larry shouted why they weren't at the Blanche estate, and the guy replied that Duke Candle would definitely find them there. He said they needed a place where they could be alone. He would like to propose to the lady. The crazy guy invited her to live with him, run away with him, and they would live happily together. When he said they would have strong children, Larry hit him on the head, took the keys, and ran to open the cage. But she barely managed to open the door. The crazy guy hit her on the head and then threw her to the ground. He took out his sword and said that she constantly tried to escape, and therefore, he simply left her no other choice. Larry begged him to help her, said she missed Asher, while Asher himself wondered why he was acting so strangely. He began to feel like she was slowly moving away from him. He thought he probably did something wrong. Asher was worried, already being tired of her, when Gerard ran up to him and told him that my lady had disappeared. Gerard reported that she left the estate using her stealth skill because he personally checked all the places she could go. But he couldn't find her anywhere. Asher thought that since he couldn't find her anywhere, it means that the Blanchett family might have kidnapped her. Most likely it is so, because they had already kidnapped Larry before. Asher ordered a carriage to be prepared so that everyone would head to the Blanchett estate. This was enough reason for their destruction. Escher decided to get rid of them. Upon arriving at the estate, Duke Blanche shouted it wasn't him who took Larry away then. Escher replied that she had disappeared again, and the Duke asked if that was the reason his people were making a mess here. The Duke was angry and shouted, "Where did that girl go?" Asher thought, judging by his reaction, he was really not involved. Asher wondered if Larry really wasn't there and looked at his subordinates, who signaled that she wasn't there. The Duke slapped Escher on the shoulder and said that he had turned the whole house upside down with the knights. And he never found her. Escher made a gesture with his hand and told him to hope that he really had nothing to do with this disappearance. Then the Duke became worried. The Duke was worried that things were not going according to his plan, and Escher ordered his knights to return. Escher began to worry that Larry had left him, because lately she had been acting very strange. Or maybe she just couldn't stand it and ran away to a place where he couldn't find her. Or she left because she hated him. But he didn't care. He said he would never leave, and it was Larry. He believed that she couldn't run away without saying a word, and then Gerard arrived running and said that he had found traces of her on the old city side. But let's go back to the crazy guy who asked if the sorceress would manage without a leg. The crazy guy said that either she would lose her legs or he would heal them, and they would live happily together. Larry thought that the only way to heal was to release mana, but there was simply no more mana left. And even if she healed, she couldn't win due to lack of strength. She wondered if she could even escape with those legs. Larry thought she had to survive. She needed to tell Asher something and also completely remove the curse for the sake of her happy future. Poor Larry dreamed of seeing Asher and promised him that she would return alive for him. But then they heard a noise, and the guy lifted Larry and told her that they had to run. He was angry because he didn't understand how he found her. And then he understood why his mana was gradually running out. Then he started strangling her, calling her a traitor, and continued talking nonsense about living together. The guy said that since he had enough mana for the whole trip, it means he has an incredible amount. Meanwhile, Escher and his knights were killing everyone they found in their path while searching for Larry. And then the crazy guy appeared on the rock with an injured Larry, and the guy said that he still managed to find them. So it turns out that the demon of war wants to become a prince on a white horse. The guy said, laughing. Asher ordered him to take his hands off Larry, but the guy put a dagger to him and asked if he wanted the lady to be safe. If so, then don't let him move. And then he whispered to Larry that as long as she didn't rock the boat, he wouldn't hurt her. Then Asher asked him what he wanted, and the guy replied that he should give them all the documents. Asher immediately ordered Gerard to do this. And then the guy said that he wanted to get out of here without any obstacle. And Asher replied that he would if he left Larry. And to guarantee this, the guy ordered Asher to be tied up. Larry started crying and begged Asher to leave. She literally begged him to leave. Only Asher didn't listen to her, and told the crazy guy that he wouldn't hold back if Larry suffered even more. The guy replied that he should worry more about himself and added that it was very funny to belittle him. Larry started screaming and begging him to leave. She screamed that it was all his fault and that it was only his problems. She started blaming herself, saying that it was all because of her limited time. She didn't get attention from her family. Asher misinterpreted their relationship, and now that she was kidnapped, he was in trouble. And again, he shouted at him to leave. But Asher didn't move, and Larry wondered why he didn't just leave in another situation. He would have gotten rid of everyone a long time ago. She wondered if it was because he was being threatened by what he was willing to give up for fear of hurting her. Then she took that dagger, thinking that Asher was not stupid, but for some reason he was willing to do such a thing for her. For his sake, Larry wondered why she was so angry. What was the reason for her resentment towards Asher? Whether it's because he wants to give up his life so easily or because he didn't listen to her, even though she asked him to leave. She realized that everything was completely wrong. She was angry because she loved him. Angry because he was the one she loved, and he didn't value his life. He is willing to sacrifice his senseless life for the sake of a woman with a terminal illness. She thought he would also be angry with her, but she still hopes he won't hold a grudge against her. First, she apologized mentally to Asher, plunged the dagger into herself, and then apologized out loud. And since she was standing on the cliff, when the guy let her go, Larry fell directly off the cliff. Asher immediately ran to catch his beloved, but Larry thought her time was limited anyway. And she asked him not to be angry. The reason is that she pretended not to know Asher's bad side, hid her illness, and insisted that she didn't love him. It was concluded that she really loved Asher because she was in a dream without knowing the whole situation. That's why she kept telling herself that she didn't need to love Asher and that he didn't love her. Larry thought that was her end. Poor Asher was in shock. He continued calling her and hugging her. Asher wondered what to do. He blamed himself for not being able to protect her. He wondered if this happened because he couldn't let her go. Or is it because he is a monster? He longed for what he shouldn't have had in the first place, Asher thought. But he himself understood that he simply couldn't let her go, and he erred. It was already too late to return to the time when he didn't know her yet. His lover, his savior, his Larry, is now dead, and no one can stop his anger.